This is Easy Drift Sleep, and tonight we have something special for you. We are going to guide you through Elijah in the wilderness, the still small voice on Mount Horeb, uncovering its hidden corners and forgotten details. If these evenings bring you comfort, tap subscribe now. Your next story is always just one sleep away. Take a slow breath, release what you are holding, and let your story begin. The late afternoon sun, a tired orange, began its slow descent behind the jagged, ancient peaks of the Negev desert, casting long, purple shadows that stretched like weary fingers across the parched earth. A faint, dry breeze, carrying the scent of dust and distant, sun-baked rock, whispered through the sparse, thorny acacia trees, their branches brittle and still. The only sounds were the soft, rhythmic chirping of unseen insects and the almost imperceptible rustle of sand shifting in the gentle current of the air, a quiet symphony of the fading day. The air itself felt thin and dry, carrying the day's accumulated heat, but promising a cool, clear night under a vast, star-dusted sky. Elijah, his frame weary from the long, desperate journey, found himself seated beneath the meager shade of a solitary broom tree, its gnarled roots clinging stubbornly to the arid soil. The events of the past days had etched themselves deeply onto his spirit, a relentless succession of triumphs and terrors that had left him utterly spent, his heart heavy with a profound exhaustion that settled deep into his bones. He had fled from Jezreel, a city now far behind him, its memories still sharp and stinging in his mind, the image of Queen Jezebel's furious, vengeful face haunting his every step. The prophet, who had so recently stood with such unwavering courage against the 450 prophets of Baal on the slopes of Mount Carmel, calling down fire from the heavens, now felt a chilling tremor of fear, a very human vulnerability that had driven him into this desolate wilderness. His journey had been swift and desperate, a flight for his very life, pushing him beyond the familiar borders of Israel, past the bustling settlements and cultivated fields, into the untamed, unforgiving expanse of Judah's wilderness. He had walked for one day, perhaps more, without stopping, his sandals scuffing against the loose stones and gritty sand, his cloak, once a symbol of his prophetic authority, now merely a heavy, dust-laden burden. The sun had beaten down mercilessly, baking the earth and draining his strength with each passing hour, until finally, utterly depleted, he could go no further. He had collapsed beneath this broom tree, its sparse canopy offering little true shelter from the relentless sun, but providing at least a psychological refuge from the vast, open sky. His head, heavy with fatigue and despair, rested against the rough bark of the tree, and his eyes, bloodshot from lack of sleep and the desert glare, closed slowly. A deep sigh, heavy with resignation, escaped his lips. He felt utterly alone, isolated in this immense, silent landscape, a solitary figure against the backdrop of an indifferent world. He had prayed, not with the fervent, commanding voice he had used on Carmel, but with a quiet, broken whisper, a plea for an end to his suffering. "It is enough," he had murmured, the words barely audible even to himself, tasting of dust and weariness. "Now, Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers." He longed for the sweet oblivion of sleep, a release from the crushing weight of his burdens, a cessation of the fear that still gnawed at the edges of his consciousness. As the last vestiges of daylight bled from the sky, painting the western horizon in hues of soft rose and deep violet, a heavy, profound sleep finally claimed him. It was not the light, restorative sleep of a peaceful mind, but the deep, almost unconscious slumber of utter exhaustion, a temporary escape from the waking world's demands. He lay there, a small, still form in the deepening twilight, the desert night beginning to wrap its cool, dark embrace around him. The stars, one by one, began to prick through the velvety blackness of the sky, appearing with a brilliance rarely seen in more populated lands, their ancient light falling softly upon the sleeping prophet. It was in this deep, dreamless state that a gentle touch roused him, a sensation so light it might have been the brush of a desert breeze. He stirred slowly, his eyelids heavy, and blinked against the soft, ethereal glow of the moon, now high above. Standing beside him, or so it seemed in the hazy space between sleep and wakefulness, was an angel, its form indistinct yet radiating a quiet, comforting presence. The angel's voice, if it spoke, was not heard with his ears, but felt as a gentle urging in his spirit, a quiet command to rise and eat. Beside his head, where moments before there had been only dry earth and scattered stones, he now saw a small, round cake baked on hot coals, its aroma faint but undeniably present, promising sustenance. And next to it, a jar of water, its surface cool and inviting, reflecting the pale moonlight. He felt a profound, almost overwhelming gratitude, a sudden surge of hope in the midst of his despair. He ate the cake slowly, savoring each bite, its simple goodness a balm to his starved body. He drank the cool water, feeling it revive the parched tissues of his throat, bringing a measure of refreshment to his weary frame. The food and water, appearing as if by magic in that desolate place, were a tangible sign that he was not utterly forgotten, not entirely abandoned. After he had eaten and drunk, a temporary strength flowing back into him, the profound exhaustion pulled him back into sleep, a heavy, comforting blanket. The desert night deepened, the air growing cooler, and the silence became even more profound, broken only by the distant, mournful cry of a jackal, a sound that seemed to echo the loneliness in his own heart. He slept again, a deep, dreamless sleep, until once more, the gentle touch roused him. The angel was there again, its presence a quiet reassurance in the vast darkness. Again, the soft, inner voice urged him, "Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for you." This time, the words carried a gentle urgency, a foretelling of the arduous path that still lay ahead. He ate and drank once more, the miraculous provision strengthening him not just physically, but spiritually, instilling a flicker of resolve where only despair had resided. The simple meal, twice given, was a profound act of grace, a quiet affirmation that his life, though he wished it ended, was still held in a divine purpose. With this renewed strength, a quiet, steady energy that seemed to flow from beyond himself, Elijah rose from beneath the broom tree. The moon had begun its slow descent, casting long, silvery shadows across the desert floor, and the first faint hints of dawn were just beginning to touch the eastern sky, painting the horizon with soft, pearlescent hues. He wrapped his cloak more tightly around him, feeling the cool morning air on his face, and began to walk. His destination was Mount Horeb, the mountain of God, a sacred place shrouded in ancient memory and divine encounter, a journey that would take him 40 days and 40 nights through the heart of the wilderness. The path he chose was not a well-trodden one, for there were few paths in this vast, empty expanse. He walked across plains of gravel and sand, over low, rolling hills dotted with sparse, hardy shrubs, and through narrow wadis, dry riverbeds carved by ancient, forgotten floods. The sun, as the days progressed, rose higher and higher, its golden light intensifying, baking the earth to a hard, cracked surface. The air shimmered with heat, creating mirages in the distance, shimmering pools of water that vanished as he approached, a cruel illusion in a land desperate for moisture. Each day was a rhythm of walking, resting briefly in the meager shade of a rock or a stunted tree when the sun was at its zenith, and then walking again as the light softened towards evening. The nights were cool, sometimes even cold, and the stars, unhindered by city lights, blazed with an astonishing intensity, a silent, glittering canopy above his solitary journey. He saw little life in this harsh landscape, an occasional desert fox, its fur the color of sand, darting quickly into the shadows, a lone eagle circling high above, its keen eyes scanning the vast emptiness, perhaps a scuttling lizard, its scales glinting in the sun. The silence was profound, broken only by the sound of his own footsteps, the rustle of his cloak, and the steady rhythm of his breathing. His mind, no longer consumed by the immediate terror of Jezebel's threat, began to turn inward, reflecting on the events that had led him to this desolate journey. He remembered the triumph on Mount Carmel, the dramatic confrontation with the prophets of Baal, the roar of the crowd, the fire from heaven consuming the sacrifice, the stones, the wood, and even the water in the trench. He recalled the subsequent slaughter of the false prophets, a necessary act in his eyes, a purging of the land of its idolatry. And then, the sudden, torrential rain, breaking a 3-year drought, a powerful sign of God's vindication. Yet, despite these overwhelming proofs of divine power, the heart of the kingdom had not truly turned back. Jezebel, the foreign queen, still held sway, her influence unwavering, her resolve unbroken. It was this realization, perhaps more than the threat to his life, that had plunged him into such deep despair. He had poured out his life, his strength, his very being, for his people, and it seemed to have been in vain. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into more than 1 month, his body, though sustained by the miraculous provision of food and water, grew leaner, honed by the relentless demands of the desert. His spirit, however, was undergoing a different kind of transformation. The noise and clamor of the world had receded, replaced by the deep, resonant silence of the wilderness. In this vast emptiness, stripped of all distractions, he was forced to confront himself, his fears, his doubts, his profound sense of failure. The desert, in its austere beauty, was a crucible, refining his understanding, preparing him for something yet unknown. Finally, after 40 days and 40 nights of relentless travel, the landscape began to change. The low, rolling hills gave way to more imposing formations, their peaks rising sharply against the sky, their slopes scarred with ancient rockfalls and deep fissures. He recognized the signs, the unique geological features that marked the approach to the sacred mountain. Mount Horeb, also known as Sinai, stood before him, a majestic, formidable presence, its granite slopes dark and forbidding. This was the place where God had spoken to Moses from the burning bush, where the covenant had been given, where the law had been etched onto tablets of stone. It was a place of profound holiness, imbued with the echoes of divine presence. He found a cave, a natural hollow in the side of the mountain, its entrance narrow and dark, offering shelter from the elements and a sense of enclosure after the vast openness of the desert. He entered, the air inside cool and damp, carrying the faint scent of rock and earth. He sat down, his back against the rough stone wall, and the weariness of his long journey settled upon him once more. The silence within the cave was absolute, a deep, resonant quiet that seemed to absorb all sound. As he rested, pondering the purpose of this arduous journey, the word of the Lord came to him, not as a booming voice from the heavens, but as a quiet, internal knowing, a gentle question that resonated deep within his spirit. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" It was a question that invited introspection, a gentle challenge to articulate the depths of his despair and the reasons for his flight. He answered, his voice a low murmur in the quiet of the cave, the words heavy with his accumulated burdens. "I have been very zealous for the Lord God of hosts, for the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they seek to take my life." His words painted a picture of utter desolation, a prophet standing alone against a tide of apostasy, his efforts seemingly in vain, his life in peril. He felt a profound sense of isolation, believing himself to be the last faithful servant in a land that had utterly abandoned its God. After his lament, the quiet voice within him instructed him, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord." It was an invitation to a deeper encounter, a call to step out of the darkness of the cave and into the potential presence of the divine. Elijah, though weary, felt a stir of anticipation, a quiet obedience rising within him. He rose slowly, his joints stiff from the long journey, and made his way to the mouth of the cave, stepping out into the cool, clear mountain air. He stood there, on the rugged slope of Mount Horeb, facing the vast expanse of the wilderness, the sky above him a brilliant, deep blue. He waited, his heart a mixture of trepidation and longing for whatever was to come. And then the mountain itself began to stir. A great and strong wind tore into the mountain, a powerful, roaring force that shrieked through the crags and fissures, tearing at the ancient rock. It was not a gentle breeze, but a tempest of immense power, capable of rending mountains and shattering rocks. The sound was deafening, a primal scream of nature, and Elijah had to brace himself against its fury, his cloak whipping wildly around him. Loose stones clattered down the slopes, dislodged by the sheer force of the gale. The air filled with dust and grit, stinging his eyes and coating his tongue. He could feel the very ground beneath his feet tremble with the immense power of the wind. Yet, amidst this terrifying display of raw power, the Lord was not in the wind. He sensed no divine presence within the chaos, no voice in the roaring gale. The wind passed, leaving behind a profound, almost ringing silence, a temporary lull after the storm's violent passage. Then, after the wind, came an earthquake. The ground beneath his feet began to heave and shake, a deep, rumbling tremor that vibrated through his very bones. The mountain groaned, a low, guttural sound, as if the earth itself were in agony. Cracks appeared in the rock faces, and larger boulders, dislodged from their precarious perches, tumbled down the slopes with a terrifying crash, echoing through the mountain valleys. He stumbled, struggling to maintain his balance, his heart pounding in his chest. The raw power of the earth's upheaval was immense, overwhelming, a reminder of the fragility of all things in the face of such forces. Yet, even in this profound geological upheaval, the Lord was not in the earthquake. He felt no divine presence, heard no sacred voice in the terrifying rumble and shake of the earth. The earthquake subsided as suddenly as it had begun, leaving behind a stillness that felt even more profound, a quiet after the storm and tremor. And after the earthquake, a fire. A brilliant, consuming blaze erupted, perhaps from a lightning strike or a spontaneous combustion of dry brush, licking its way up the mountain slopes with terrifying speed and intensity. The heat was immense, radiating outwards, and the air filled with the acrid smell of smoke and burning vegetation. The flames danced and roared, casting flickering, demonic shadows against the rock faces, painting the night sky with an orange, hellish glow. The crackling and hissing of the fire was a new, terrifying sound, a primal force of destruction. Elijah shielded his eyes from the intense light and heat, feeling the scorching breath of the inferno. It was a spectacular and awe-inspiring display of power, a force that could consume all in its path. Yet, even in the midst of this overwhelming conflagration, the Lord was not in the fire. He perceived no divine presence, no sacred communication within the consuming flames. The fire, too, eventually died down, leaving behind smoldering embers, a lingering scent of smoke, and a deep, quiet darkness. After the fire, after the raw, untamed forces of nature had spent themselves, after the wind, the earthquake, and the fire had passed, there came a sound. It was not a roar, not a rumble, not a crackle, but a still, small voice. A sound so soft, so gentle, so utterly quiet, that it was barely a whisper, a delicate breath of air. It was the sound of sheer silence, a profound stillness that was itself a presence. It was a sound that demanded absolute attention, not through its volume, but through its almost imperceptible quality, drawing one inward, compelling one to listen with the deepest part of their being. It was the sound of a gentle whisper, a quiet knowing, a delicate breath that stirred the very air around him without disturbing a single leaf. It was a silence so complete, so profound, that it seemed to hold within it the very essence of creation, the unspoken truth of the universe. And when Elijah heard it, that almost inaudible sound, that delicate whisper of stillness, he knew, with an absolute certainty that settled deep into his soul, that the Lord was in that still, small voice. He knew that this was the presence he had sought, the answer to his desperate journey. He pulled his mantle over his face, a gesture of profound reverence and humility, for he understood that he was standing in the very presence of God, not in the overwhelming displays of power, but in the quiet, gentle whisper that followed. He stepped back into the mouth of the cave, seeking the quiet enclosure, the intimate space where such a delicate voice could be heard and understood, where the profound stillness could truly settle into his spirit. And there, in the quiet darkness of the cave, the still, small voice came to him again, repeating the question that had first drawn him to this sacred mountain, a gentle, probing inquiry that invited him to once more articulate the depths of his heart, to lay bare his fears and his faith before the divine presence, to truly hear and be heard in the profound quiet of that sacred place, the air around him hushed and still, carrying only the faintest echo of the mountain's ancient secrets. Elijah, his senses now keenly attuned to the subtle shifts in the atmosphere, felt a tremor begin deep within the earth, a low rumble that vibrated through the rock beneath his feet, a sound that started as a distant murmur and quickly grew into a powerful, resonant hum, shaking the very foundations of the mountain, a sound not unlike the distant thunder of a great storm approaching, yet far more profound, as if the mountain itself were groaning from its ancient slumber. The air, which had been so still, now began to stir, a faint breeze picking up, carrying with it the scent of dry earth and mineral, a cool breath preceding the immense power that was gathering. He braced himself, his cloak drawn tighter, the coarse wool a familiar comfort against his skin, as the rumble intensified, becoming a roar, a deafening crescendo that filled the cavern, echoing and re-echoing off the rough stone walls, a sound that seemed to strip away all other sensations, leaving only the raw, visceral experience of pure, unadulterated force. Unadulterated force. Then, with a sudden, violent surge, the wind burst forth, a hurricane of unimaginable power, tearing through the landscape outside the cave, a furious, invisible hand ripping at the very fabric of the mountain, howling past the cave's mouth with a sound like 1,000 wild beasts, a tempest that could uproot ancient cedars and reshape the very contours of the land. Elijah, pressed against the rough, cold stone of the cave wall, could feel the immense pressure of the air as it rushed by, a physical weight against his body, even within the relative shelter of his refuge. Dust and small pebbles were whipped into a frenzy at the cave's entrance, dancing in mad spirals, and the air itself seemed to crackle with an unseen energy, a raw, untamed force that spoke of creation and destruction in the same breath. Yet, in the midst of this terrifying, overwhelming display of nature's might, Elijah perceived, with a quiet certainty that settled deep within his spirit, that the Lord was not in the wind. This was a prelude, a grand, majestic overture, but not the presence itself, not the core of the divine message he sought. He remained in his place, watchful, his heart perhaps beating a little faster, but his gaze steady, his spirit waiting. As abruptly as it had begun, the wind began to subside, its ferocious roar diminishing into a mournful wail, then a sigh, and finally, a profound stillness returned, leaving behind a lingering scent of ozone and the disturbed dust settling slowly back to the earth. The silence that followed was not empty, but heavy, pregnant with expectation, a silence that seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next manifestation. It was in this charged quiet that the earth began to tremble again, not a distant rumble this time, but a sharp, violent shudder that shook the mountain to its very core, a deep, guttural groan from the planet itself. The ground beneath Elijah's feet bucked and swayed, a terrifying, disorienting motion that threatened to throw him off balance. Rocks dislodged from the cave ceiling, small fragments of ancient stone clattering to the floor, raising a fine dust that caught in the faint light filtering in. Outside, he could hear the ominous sound of larger boulders tumbling down the mountainside, their impact echoing like distant drums, a testament to the immense power being unleashed. This was an earthquake, a seismic event of colossal proportions, capable of reshaping valleys and toppling mighty fortresses, a raw, elemental force that spoke of the immense power held within the Earth's crust, the very plates of the planet grinding against each other with unimaginable force. The air filled with the smell of pulverized rock and the metallic tang of disturbed minerals, a primal scent that spoke of deep geological processes. Elijah, holding fast to the cave wall, felt the mountain groan and shift around him, a living, breathing entity in its throes. He understood, with a profound clarity, that such an event could easily swallow him whole, could bury him beneath tons of rock, yet he did not flee. He knew, with that same quiet certainty, that the Lord was not in the earthquake. This was another powerful demonstration, another awe-inspiring display of cosmic might, but it was not the intimate, personal presence he yearned for, the voice that would speak to his weary soul. He waited, his senses absorbing the diminishing tremors, the settling dust, the gradual return of a fragile quiet. The tremors eventually faded, leaving behind a new landscape of shifted stones and fresh cracks in the ancient rock, a testament to the earth's raw power. A heavy silence descended once more, a profound stillness that seemed to press in on all sides, broken only by the faint, distant sound of settling debris. Then, from the very heart of the mountain, a new sound began to emerge, a low, persistent growl, growing in intensity, accompanied by a faint, acrid smell that prickled the back of his throat. A reddish-orange glow began to emanate from deeper within the mountain, a flickering light that painted the rough stone walls of the cave with dancing shadows, a warmth that slowly began to permeate the cool, damp air. This was the unmistakable sign of fire, not a brush fire on the surface, but a deep, subterranean inferno, a volcanic eruption perhaps, or a fissure opening up, spewing forth molten rock and superheated gases. The heat intensified rapidly, becoming oppressive, a dry, scorching breath that made the air shimmer, causing Elijah to instinctively shield his face with his arm. The roar of the fire grew louder, a hungry, consuming sound, like 1,000 furnaces burning simultaneously, a primal force that could melt stone and vaporize water, transforming all in its path into ash and smoke. Outside the cave, he could imagine the sky alight with a fiery glow, the air thick with ash, the very ground beneath him becoming a crucible. The smell of sulfur and burning rock filled his nostrils, a pungent, choking odor that spoke of the earth's fiery core. This was a spectacle of terrifying beauty, a raw, destructive power that could reshape worlds, a force that had been revered and feared by ancient peoples, often associated with the divine presence, with the very essence of a consuming god. Yet, even as the heat pressed in, and the roar filled his ears, Elijah knew, with a quiet, unwavering conviction, that the Lord was not in the fire. This was another magnificent, overwhelming display, a breathtaking demonstration of power, but it was not the gentle, guiding presence he sought. He remained still, enduring the heat, the roar, the acrid smoke, his spirit poised in patient anticipation. The fire, too, eventually began to recede, its fierce roar softening into a crackle, then a hiss, and finally, a fading glow, leaving behind a lingering warmth in the air and the faint, metallic scent of cooled ash. The intense heat dissipated, replaced by a comfortable warmth, and the oppressive glow diminished into a soft, embers-like light, then darkness. A profound quiet settled over the mountain once more, deeper and more complete than any silence that had come before, as if the very air had been purified by the preceding events, cleansed of all extraneous sound and sensation. It was a silence that was not empty, but full, vibrating with an unseen energy, a stillness that invited introspection, a hush that seemed to hold the entire universe in its breath. And then, in that profound, almost sacred quiet, a sound emerged, so subtle, so delicate, so utterly unlike the preceding cataclysms, that it required a complete reorientation of Elijah's senses to perceive it. It was not a roar, not a tremor, not a consuming flame, but a faint, almost imperceptible whisper, a sound so gentle it could have been merely the rustling of a single dry leaf in an otherwise windless night, or the softest sigh of the air itself. It was a sound that did not demand attention, but invited it, a sound that did not overwhelm, but permeated, a sound that was not external, but seemed to resonate from within the very core of his being, a breath, a murmur, a still small voice. The ancient Hebrew text uses the phrase kol demamar daka, which can be translated as a sound of thin silence or a voice of gentle stillness, conveying a sense of extreme subtlety, an almost inaudible quality that paradoxically carried immense weight and presence. This was the moment, the culmination of his journey, the answer to his desperate plea. Elijah, who had stood firm against kings, who had faced down hundreds of prophets of Baal on Carmel with fire from heaven, who had run for his life in fear, now found himself utterly humbled, completely attentive to this whisper. It was not a voice that spoke with thunderous authority, but with an intimate, personal resonance, a sound that bypassed the intellect and spoke directly to the heart, a voice that was both ancient and utterly present, a voice that carried the weight of eternity in its gentle cadence. He instinctively drew his mantle about his face, a gesture of profound reverence and humility, as was the custom when encountering the divine presence, acknowledging the sacredness of the moment, the overwhelming holiness of what he was experiencing. The coarse fabric of his cloak, familiar and comforting, now served as a veil, a thin barrier between his mortal eyes and the ineffable glory he perceived not with sight, but with the deepest part of his soul. He stood at the entrance of the cave, not daring to step out fully, but poised on the threshold, a man on the precipice of understanding, listening with every fiber of his being. And the voice, the still small voice, spoke to him, echoing the question that had been posed before the wind, the earthquake, and the fire, a question that was not truly a question seeking information, but an invitation, a gentle prompting for him to articulate his deepest fears and convictions once more, to truly hear himself as he spoke them aloud in the divine presence. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" the voice asked, not with judgment, but with a profound, compassionate understanding, a gentle inquiry that invited him to lay bare his soul, to once again recount the burdens that weighed so heavily upon him, the despair that had driven him to this desolate place. The words were not loud, yet they filled the vastness of the mountain, filling the quiet space within the cave, resonating in the very air around him, a sound that was both intimate and immense, personal and universal. Elijah, his voice perhaps a little hoarse from the dust and the emotion, but steady, responded with the same words he had spoken before, words that had been rehearsed in the lonely hours of his flight, words that encapsulated his entire being, his zeal, his pain, his sense of isolation. "I have been very zealous for the Lord God of hosts," he began, the words flowing from him, a confession, a declaration, a lament. He spoke of his unwavering devotion, his passionate commitment to the covenant of his ancestors, to the one true God, a zeal that had consumed him, that had driven him to confront the idolatry and corruption that had swept through the land of Israel. He spoke of his tireless efforts, his unwavering stand against the tide of apostasy, his solitary battle against the worship of Baal and Asherah, the Canaanite deities whose cults had been aggressively promoted by Queen Jezebel. He continued, his voice gaining a quiet intensity as he recounted the injustices and the betrayals, "For the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword." Each phrase was a brushstroke painting a picture of profound national apostasy, a deep spiritual sickness that had infected the very heart of the kingdom. He described the systematic dismantling of the ancient altars dedicated to Yahweh, the very symbols of the covenant relationship, replaced by pagan shrines. He spoke of the brutal persecution of the prophets of the Lord, men and women who dared to speak truth to power, who were hunted down and executed, their voices silenced, their messages suppressed. This was not merely a political grievance, but a deep spiritual wound, a violation of the sacred trust between God and his people, a betrayal that cut Elijah to the core of his being. He had witnessed this unraveling, this descent into darkness, and it had broken his heart. And then, the culminating lament, the cry of a man who felt utterly alone in his righteous stand, I alone am left, and they seek to take my life. This was the core of his despair, the profound sense of isolation that had driven him to the wilderness, to this cave on Mount Horeb. He believed himself to be the last true prophet, the solitary beacon of light in a land consumed by darkness, the only one left who truly honored the Lord. The threat to his life was not merely a physical danger, but a symbol of the complete rejection of his message, the ultimate consequence of his unwavering faithfulness. He had risked everything, stood against everyone, and now he felt abandoned, hunted, and utterly alone. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of his suffering, his voice a quiet echo in the vastness of the mountain, a raw, honest outpouring of a soul in anguish, laid bare before the still small voice, a voice that listened with infinite patience and profound understanding, not interrupting, not judging, but simply receiving the full measure of his pain and his devotion, allowing him the space to articulate the depths of his weariness and his unwavering commitment, preparing him for what was to come, for the gentle guidance that would follow this profound moment of shared vulnerability and quiet communion, a communion that transcended mere words, reaching into the silent spaces of the heart, where true healing and renewed purpose could begin to take root, like a tiny seed planted in fertile ground after a long, arduous winter, waiting for the warmth of the sun and the gentle touch of rain to awaken its hidden life, to unfurl its delicate leaves towards the light, a promise of new growth and enduring strength, even in the most desolate of landscapes, a testament to the enduring power of hope and the quiet resilience of the human spirit, guided by a divine presence that manifests not in spectacle, but in the softest whisper, a whisper that holds the universe in its gentle embrace, a whisper that speaks directly to the soul, inviting it to rest, to listen, to truly find its peace amidst the vastness of the world and the quiet stirrings within. Elijah, his body still heavy with the journey's weariness, his spirit a complex tapestry of fear and faith, felt a subtle shift in the air, a coolness that seeped through the rough wool of his mantle as the sun began its slow descent towards the western horizon, painting the rugged peaks of Horeb in hues of deep orange and fading rose. The day's harsh light, which had beaten down upon the barren landscape, softened into a gentle glow, casting long, wavering shadows across the ancient stones and the gnarled, wind-stunted bushes that clung tenaciously to the mountainside. He had found a cave, a natural hollow carved into the rock face by millennia of wind and water, a place of refuge that offered a measure of shelter from the elements and a quiet solitude that was both a comfort and a challenge to his troubled mind. The entrance was narrow, barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through, and inside, the air was cool and still, carrying the faint, earthy scent of damp rock and dry dust, a scent that spoke of deep time and forgotten echoes. He settled himself within the cave's embrace, the rough stone at his back a solid, unyielding presence, a stark contrast to the tumultuous thoughts that still swirled within him. The journey from Beersheba had been arduous, a 40-day trek through the unforgiving wilderness, a journey fueled by a miraculous meal and an unyielding, though perhaps weary, divine purpose. 40 days and 40 nights, a number resonant with ancient stories of testing and transformation, of desert wanderings and profound encounters. He had walked through the scorching days, the sun a relentless eye in the vast, empty sky, and through the chill of the desert nights, where the stars blazed with an almost blinding intensity against the velvet blackness, a cosmic canvas that seemed to mock the smallness of his own human struggles. Each step had been a prayer, each breath a silent plea, as he moved further and further away from the familiar world of men, deeper into the sacred solitude of the wilderness, drawn by an unseen hand towards this ancient mountain, this Horeb, also known as Sinai, the very place where the divine presence had once descended in fire and smoke and thunder to speak to an entire nation. As darkness fully enveloped the mountain, the sounds of the wilderness began to assert themselves, the soft rustle of unseen creatures moving through the scrub, the distant, mournful cry of a desert owl carried on the rising breeze, the gentle sigh of the wind as it whispered through the crevices of the rock. He might have heard the faint, rhythmic chirping of crickets, a steady, hypnotic pulse in the vast quietude, or the subtle shifting of sand and pebbles dislodged by the night air. The air grew colder, and he pulled his mantle tighter around him, feeling the coarse texture of the wool against his skin, a familiar comfort in an unfamiliar place. He was alone, utterly alone, save for the unseen presence that had guided him here, a presence that he now desperately sought to understand, to encounter, to hear. A question, gentle yet insistent, seemed to form in the quiet air of the cave, not a spoken word, but a thought that resonated deep within his being. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" It was a question that invited introspection, a gentle probing of his motives, his fears, his very purpose. He had fled, yes, fled from the wrath of Jezebel, from the very real threat of death, but he had also fled from the burden of his calling, from the immense weight of standing alone against a tide of idolatry and corruption. He had felt utterly abandoned, a solitary prophet in a land that had turned its back on the ancient covenant. His reply, when it came, was a quiet lament, a pouring out of his heart in the stillness of the night. "I have been very zealous for the Lord God of hosts," he began, his voice perhaps a low murmur in the cavern, or perhaps merely a thought echoing in his mind, "for the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they seek to take my life." Each phrase was laden with the bitter taste of disappointment, of perceived failure, of profound loneliness. He spoke of the broken covenant, the sacred bond between the divine and the people, now seemingly shattered. He spoke of the desecrated altars, the places of worship now lying in ruins, symbols of a forgotten faith. He spoke of the murdered prophets, his brethren, silenced by the very people they sought to guide. And finally, he spoke of his own desperate isolation, the crushing weight of being "I alone am left," a sentiment that cut to the very core of his being, a feeling of utter singularity in a world that seemed to have abandoned the truth. The night deepened, and the stars outside the cave entrance seemed to grow brighter, their ancient light piercing the darkness with a cold, indifferent beauty. Perhaps he drifted into a fitful sleep, his mind still wrestling with the day's anxieties and the echoes of his lament. Or perhaps he remained awake, listening to the subtle shifts of the mountain, the slow, deliberate breathing of the earth itself. The air inside the cave remained cool and still, a sanctuary from the vast, indifferent wilderness outside. He might have heard the distant, almost imperceptible sound of a small stone dislodged by the night wind, rolling down the mountainside with a faint, whispering rustle that quickly faded into silence. Then, as the first pale hints of dawn began to touch the eastern sky, painting the distant peaks in soft, ethereal grays and mauves, a command came, not as a voice, but as an inner knowing, a clear directive that resonated within his spirit: go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord. The words were an invitation, a summons to a sacred encounter, a call to step out of the protective darkness of the cave and into the unfolding light of a new day, to position himself in a place of direct confrontation with the divine presence he sought. He rose, perhaps with a stiffness in his joints from the cold night, and made his way to the mouth of the cave, stepping out onto the rugged terrain. The air was crisp and cool, carrying the clean, sharp scent of rock and dry earth, perhaps even a faint, almost imperceptible aroma of distant desert herbs beginning to warm in the nascent light. The sky was a magnificent canvas of evolving colors, from the deep indigo of night to the softest blush of pink and gold, gradually revealing the vast, silent expanse of the wilderness stretching out before him. He stood there, a solitary figure against the immensity of the landscape, his rough mantle a dark silhouette against the brightening sky, his eyes perhaps scanning the horizon, waiting, listening. And then it came. First, a wind, a mighty, tearing wind, began to sweep across the mountain. It was not merely a breeze, not the gentle sigh of the night air, but a tempest of immense power. He would have felt its sudden, violent onset, a shock wave of air that slammed against him, threatening to tear him from his stance. The sound would have been deafening, a roaring, howling crescendo that swallowed all other noises, a primal scream of nature unleashed. He might have instinctively braced himself, leaning into the invisible force, his hair and beard whipped wildly about his face. The wind would have ripped through the ancient rock formations, tearing at the very fabric of the mountain, dislodging boulders and sending them tumbling down the slopes with a terrifying, echoing crash. He would have heard the grinding, groaning sound of the mountain itself, as if the very bedrock were being rent asunder, a visceral, terrifying demonstration of raw, untamed power. Dust and grit would have been whipped into the air, stinging his eyes and coating his tongue, the taste of dry earth and pulverized stone filling his mouth. The air would have grown thick with debris, obscuring his vision, forcing him to squint against the onslaught. This was the kind of wind that spoke of creation and destruction, of forces beyond human comprehension, a display of overwhelming might that could humble even the most hardened spirit. Yet, amidst this cataclysmic display, the divine presence was not in the wind. He would have felt this absence, a subtle knowing that despite the immense power, this was not the ultimate encounter he sought, not the voice he yearned to hear. The wind, as suddenly as it had began to subside, its roaring fury gradually diminishing into a fading wail, leaving behind a profound, almost ringing silence. The dust began to settle, slowly revealing the scarred landscape, the newly dislodged rocks, the disturbed earth. The air, though still carrying the scent of stirred dust, grew calmer, clearer. Then, immediately following the wind, came an earthquake. The ground beneath his feet began to tremble, a deep, resonant rumble that vibrated through the very soles of his worn sandals, up through his legs, and into his core. It was a terrifying sensation, the solid earth, the very foundation of existence, suddenly becoming fluid and unstable. He would have felt the mountain itself shudder and groan, a deep, guttural sound emanating from beneath the surface. The rocks around him would have shifted and cracked, the sound of splintering stone sharp and distinct in the now quieter air. He might have struggled to maintain his balance, his body swaying with the earth's convulsive movements, his hands perhaps reaching out to steady himself against the trembling rock face. The air would have been charged with a strange, electrical tension, a feeling of immense pressure building and releasing. The distant peaks might have seemed to dance and waver against the sky, an illusion created by the violent shaking. This was the earth itself in agony, a display of geological power that could swallow cities and reshape continents, a force that spoke of the fragility of human life in the face of such immense natural energy. Yet, amidst this terrifying upheaval, the divine presence was not in the earthquake. Again, that subtle knowing, that inner discernment, confirmed that this was not the ultimate encounter, not the presence he had traveled so far to meet. The earthquake, too, gradually subsided, the tremors lessening in intensity until the ground settled once more into its accustomed stillness. The deep rumbling faded into a lingering hum, then into silence. The air, though perhaps still carrying a faint, acrid smell of disturbed earth and pulverized rock, grew quiet once more, a profound stillness that seemed to hold its breath. Following the earthquake, a fire erupted. Perhaps it was a flash of lightning, a sudden, blinding illumination that momentarily turned the world into a stark, overexposed photograph, followed by the deep, cracking report of thunder echoing across the mountain. Or perhaps it was a sudden, intense blaze that ignited the dry scrub and brush clinging to the slopes, sending plumes of thick, dark smoke billowing upwards, painting the sky with an ominous, fiery glow. He would have felt the sudden, intense heat on his face, a searing warmth that contrasted sharply with the cool mountain air. The crackling and roaring of the flames would have filled the air, a hungry, consuming sound, devouring everything in its path. The air would have grown thick with the acrid smell of smoke and burning vegetation, stinging his eyes and catching in his throat, making it difficult to breathe. He might have seen the dancing, flickering orange and red tongues of fire, their chaotic movement mesmerizing and terrifying all at once. This was the elemental force of fire, a purifying, destructive power that could reshape landscapes and consume all that stood before it, a force often associated with divine manifestation in ancient traditions, a symbol of judgment and presence. Yet, amidst this consuming inferno, the divine presence was not in the fire. The same quiet certainty, the same inner discernment, told him that this, too, was not the ultimate encounter, not the voice he had journeyed into the wilderness to hear. The fire, like the wind and the earthquake before it, began to die down, its fierce intensity gradually diminishing into smoldering embers, its roaring replaced by the faint hiss and crackle of cooling ash. The smoke began to dissipate, slowly revealing the scorched earth, the blackened remnants of what had once been living plants. The air, though still carrying the lingering scent of smoke, grew clearer, calmer, settling into a profound, almost absolute stillness. And after the fire, a sound. Not a roar, not a tremor, not a blaze, but a sound so subtle, so delicate, that it demanded an entirely different kind of attention. It was described in the ancient Hebrew as a kol demamar daka, often translated as a still small voice, or a gentle whisper, or even a sound of sheer silence. It was not a sound that assaulted the senses, but one that invited, that beckoned, that required an inner quietude to truly perceive. It was the sound of an absence of sound, yet paradoxically, it carried profound meaning. Elijah would have felt it more than heard it, a subtle vibration in the air, a resonance in his spirit, a presence that was not overwhelming but deeply pervasive. It was the kind of sound that one might hear in the deepest quiet of the desert night, when the world seems to hold its breath, a sound that speaks of vastness and intimacy all at once. Perhaps it was the almost imperceptible rustle of a single leaf, or the softest sigh of the wind through a tiny crevice in the rock, or the gentle, rhythmic beating of his own heart in the profound silence. It was a sound that was not external, but seemed to arise from within, an inner knowing, a profound recognition. Upon hearing this cold mrmr, this gentle whisper that was more than sound, Elijah immediately understood. He knew. He wrapped his face in his mantle, pulling the rough wool close, a gesture of profound reverence and humility. It was a traditional act of covering one's face in the presence of the divine, a recognition of the sacredness and the overwhelming holiness that could not be fully comprehended or gazed upon directly. He stepped back into the mouth of the cave, seeking that familiar, sheltering darkness, not out of fear, but out of a deep respect for the sacred boundary that had been drawn. He stood there, perhaps leaning against the cool stone, his body still, his mind utterly focused, his senses attuned to this new, subtle manifestation. And then, the voice came again, the same gentle, probing question as before, but now imbued with the profound weight of this sacred encounter, resonating not with judgment, but with an invitation to deeper understanding. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" It was a question that cut through all the previous displays of power, all the external spectacles, and went directly to the heart of his being, to his purpose, to his journey. He answered again, his voice perhaps softer now, imbued with a renewed sense of awe and a quiet desperation. "I have been very zealous for the Lord God of hosts, because the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they seek to take my life." His words were the same, yet the context had profoundly shifted. They were no longer merely a lament born of fear and exhaustion, but a confession offered in the presence of the divine, a pouring out of his deepest anxieties and his unwavering, though weary, commitment. He reiterated his zeal, his passion for the ancient covenant, his sorrow over the apostasy of his people, the destruction of the sacred altars, the martyrdom of his fellow prophets. And still, the profound sense of isolation, the feeling of being I alone am left, a solitary figure standing against an overwhelming tide. But this time, the response was different. It was not another display of raw power, not another elemental force. Instead, it was a directive, a call to action, a gentle redirection of his focus from his own perceived isolation to the ongoing work of the divine in the world. "Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus." The command was clear, precise, and practical. It was a call to leave the sacred solitude of Horeb, to re-engage with the world, to continue his prophetic mission. The wilderness of Damascus, a region to the northeast, far from the familiar lands of Israel, suggested a new beginning, a fresh direction. He was instructed to anoint a new king over Aram, Hazael, a foreign ruler, indicating that the divine plan extended beyond the borders of Israel, encompassing the nations. Then he was to anoint Jehu, the son of Nimshi, as king over Israel, a man who would bring about a dramatic change in the leadership of the northern kingdom, a purging of the idolatrous dynasty of Ahab and Jezebel. And finally, he was to anoint Elisha, the son of Shaphat of Abel Meholah, as a prophet in his place, a successor, a continuation of the prophetic line, ensuring that the divine voice would continue to be heard in the land. This last instruction, to anoint a successor, would have been particularly significant for Elijah, addressing his profound sense of being I alone am left. It was a promise that he was not alone, and that the work would continue, carried forward by others. The instructions were a profound reassurance, a gentle correction of his perspective. He was not abandoned. He was not alone. His work was not a failure. Instead, he was a vital link in a much larger, ongoing divine plan, a plan that encompassed kings and prophets, nations and generations. The whisper had not merely acknowledged his pain, it had offered a path forward, a renewed purpose. He would have stood there for a long moment, absorbing these directives, the weight of the words settling into his spirit. The faint light of dawn would have continued to grow outside the cave, gradually illuminating the rugged grandeur of Mount Horeb, the ancient stones now bathed in a soft, golden glow. The air would have been cool and fresh, carrying the clean scent of the mountain, a scent that now seemed to hold the promise of renewal. The sounds of the wilderness would have begun to stir again, the gentle chirping of unseen birds, the soft rustle of leaves in a nascent breeze, the distant bleating of a goat, all woven into a tapestry of quiet life. Elijah, his face still perhaps covered by his mantle, would have felt a profound shift within him, a sense of peace settling over his troubled spirit, a quiet strength beginning to reassert itself. The overwhelming displays of wind, earthquake, and fire had been demonstrations of raw power, forces that could command awe and terror, but it was in the gentle whisper, the Kol Demamar Daka, that the true presence had been revealed, a presence that spoke not in overwhelming force, but in intimate invitation, in quiet guidance, in the profound stillness that lies at the heart of all things. He had come seeking a dramatic encounter, a thunderous pronouncement, but he had found something far more profound, a quiet, persistent voice that spoke directly to his deepest fears and offered a gentle path forward, a path of renewed purpose and quiet hope. The mountain, which had witnessed so much, now bore witness to this subtle transformation within the prophet, a man who had faced the storm and the fire and found solace in the softest whisper, a whisper that continued to resonate within his spirit, guiding his steps as he prepared to descend from the sacred peak and re-enter the world, carrying with him the quiet strength of that profound encounter, the memory of the still small voice, a voice that promised not the end of his struggle, but a renewed sense of direction and a quiet assurance that he was not alone, that the divine presence was always there, not in the overwhelming spectacle, but in the gentle, persistent whisper, inviting him to listen, to trust, to truly understand the nature of the sacred. Elijah, his face still streaked with the dust of the desert journey and the lingering weariness of his flight, felt a profound shift within him as that almost imperceptible sound, softer than a breath, reached his ears. It was not a sound that demanded attention through its volume, but through its sheer, unexpected presence after the thunder, the earthquake's rumble, and the fire's roar had passed. He had drawn his prophet's mantle, a heavy garment woven likely from sheep or goat hair, perhaps even camel hair, coarse against his skin, over his face, a gesture of reverence and humility, acknowledging the sacredness of the moment, the raw, unfiltered presence of the divine. This mantle, more than just clothing, was a symbol of his office, a connection to the prophetic lineage, and now it offered a thin veil between his mortal sight and the ineffable. The air around him, which had been charged with the electric tension of the storm and superheated by the fire, now settled into a cool, almost refreshing stillness. The wind had died down to nothing, leaving the silence profound and deep, broken only by the faint, distant rustle of dry leaves somewhere further down the mountain slope, or perhaps the soft scuttling of a small desert creature seeking shelter in the crevices of the rock. The sky above, which had been bruised and dark with storm clouds, was now beginning to clear, revealing the first faint pinpricks of stars emerging in the deep indigo of the pre-dawn sky, a vast, silent expanse that seemed to stretch into eternity. And then, from within that profound quiet, a voice, not booming or commanding, but gentle and inquiring, reached him. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" The words were simple, direct, yet carried the weight of ages, the wisdom of the one who knows all things. It was a question that invited introspection, a quiet examination of his journey, his fears, his very purpose. It was not an accusation, but an invitation to speak, to unburden his heart in the presence of the one who had brought him to this desolate, yet sacred, peak. Elijah, still wrapped in his mantle, slowly lowered his hands, letting the rough fabric fall away from his face. His eyes, perhaps still a little wide from the overwhelming displays of power he had just witnessed, scanned the empty cave entrance, then the vast, silent landscape beyond. There was no visible form, no burning bush, no pillar of cloud or fire, only the immense, encompassing presence that permeated the very air he breathed, the rock beneath his feet, the distant stars. He took a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the cool air fill his lungs, a stark contrast to the dust and smoke of his recent experiences. He began to speak, his voice a little hoarse, perhaps from disuse during his long journey, or from the raw emotion that had been simmering beneath the surface of his stoic prophet's demeanor. "I have been very zealous for the Lord God of hosts," his words tumbled out, a quiet torrent of pent-up frustration and despair. He recounted the struggles, the sacrifices, the unwavering dedication he had shown. He had stood alone against the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel, a solitary figure challenging hundreds, calling down fire from heaven in a dramatic display of divine power that had left the people awestruck and the false prophets defeated. He had then personally executed those prophets, a grim duty dictated by the ancient laws, a task that surely weighed heavily on his soul, even if he believed it righteous. He continued, his voice gaining a quiet intensity, "For the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword." Each phrase was a lament, a heavy stone laid upon the pile of his grievances. He spoke of the widespread apostasy, the turning away from the ancient ways, the covenant established centuries ago at this very mountain, Horeb, also known as Sinai. The altars he referred to were not the grand temple in Jerusalem, but the smaller, local altars, often simple stone structures, where the faithful offered sacrifices and prayers to Yahweh, the God of Israel. These had been systematically destroyed or replaced by altars dedicated to Baal and Asherah, the Canaanite deities favored by Queen Jezebel and King Ahab. The killing of the prophets, too, was a brutal reality of the time, a systematic persecution aimed at silencing any voice that dared to challenge the new religious order. Many prophets had been hidden in caves and fed by Obadiah, the palace administrator, a testament to the danger they faced. "I alone am left," he declared, the words carrying the full weight of his isolation, his profound sense of being the last bastion of true faith in a nation that had strayed so far. It was a cry of loneliness, a feeling that any prophet, any person standing for a difficult truth, might experience when surrounded by indifference or hostility. He truly believed he was the last, despite knowing that Obadiah had hidden 100 prophets in 2 caves. Perhaps in his despair, he felt that those hidden prophets were not actively standing against the tide, or that their numbers were insignificant compared to the overwhelming apostasy. His sense of being utterly alone was a deeply human emotion, a feeling of being abandoned and overwhelmed. "And they seek to take my life." This was the immediate, pressing danger that had driven him to flee. Jezebel's furious oath to kill him within 1 day, a direct response to the slaughter of her prophets, had sent him spiraling into despair and flight. He had just witnessed the overwhelming power of God on Carmel, yet the threat of a single, determined queen was enough to break his spirit and send him running for his life, a stark reminder of the fragility of even the most powerful human faith when faced with sustained pressure and personal danger. The voice, gentle and unwavering, listened patiently to his outpouring, allowing him to articulate the depths of his weariness and fear. There was no interruption, no judgment, only the quiet, attentive presence that had drawn him out of his hiding place. When Elijah finished, the silence returned, not an empty silence, but one that felt pregnant with understanding, a space for the words to settle, for the raw emotions to dissipate into the vastness of the mountain air. Then, the voice spoke again, not to offer comfort in the way a human might, but to give direction, to rekindle the flame of purpose within him. "Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus." The command was clear, precise, a call back to action, a redirection of his journey from flight to mission. The wilderness of Damascus was a region far to the northeast, beyond the borders of Israel, a place that would take him back towards the populated world, but to a different sphere of influence. It was a journey that would require renewed strength, a willingness to leave the perceived safety of this desolate mountain. He was given specific instructions, a series of tasks that would ensure the continuation of the divine purpose, even in the face of Israel's apostasy. "And when you arrive, you shall anoint Hazael as king over Syria." This was a surprising command. Syria, or Aram as it was known then, was often an adversary of Israel. To anoint a foreign king, one who would eventually become a scourge to Israel, seemed counterintuitive. Yet, it was part of the larger divine plan, a way to bring about justice and to shape the destinies of nations, even through means that seemed harsh or indirect to human understanding. Hazael was a powerful figure, a general in the Syrian army, and his anointing by a prophet of Yahweh would carry immense weight, even in a foreign court. "Then you shall anoint Jehu the son of Nimshi as king over Israel." This was a direct intervention in the internal affairs of Israel, a clear indication that the current dynasty of Ahab and Jezebel was to be overthrown. Jehu was a military commander, known for his swift and decisive action, a man who would bring about a violent purge of Baal worship and the house of Ahab. This anointing was a secret, momentous act, a transfer of divine authority that would set in motion a chain of events leading to revolution and bloodshed. Elijah, who had just lamented the killing of prophets, was now tasked with initiating a process that would lead to widespread destruction and the deaths of many, including the very royal family he had fled from. It was a grim, necessary task, a testament to the severity of Israel's spiritual decline. And Elisha the son of Shaphat of Abel-Meholah you shall anoint as prophet in your place. This was perhaps the most personal and comforting instruction for Elijah. It was the promise of a successor, an end to his perceived isolation. Elisha, whose name meant God is salvation, would carry on the prophetic mantle, ensuring that the voice of Yahweh would continue to be heard in Israel. Abel-Meholah was a fertile plain in the Jordan Valley, a place of agriculture and life, a stark contrast to the barren wilderness where Elijah had been hiding. This instruction offered a glimpse of hope, a continuation of the prophetic mission beyond Elijah's own struggles and eventual departure. It was an assurance that the work would not die with him, that the divine purpose was larger than any single individual. The voice then explained the overarching purpose of these appointments, the grim harvest that would follow. It shall be that whoever escapes the sword of Hazael, Jade will kill, and whoever escapes the sword of Jehu, Elisha will kill. This was a stark prophecy of judgment, a triple-layered cleansing. Hazael, the foreign king, would be an instrument of divine wrath against Israel, weakening the nation. Jehu, the new king of Israel, would complete the purge within the nation, eradicating the worship of Baal and the corrupt royal line. And Elisha, the prophet, would continue the spiritual battle, confronting any lingering idolatry and calling the people back to the covenant. It was a comprehensive plan to root out the apostasy that had so deeply grieved Elijah. The severity of the judgment underscored the depth of Israel's transgression and the divine commitment to restoring purity of worship. Yet, even within this prophecy of judgment, there was a glimmer of mercy, a promise that Elijah's feeling of utter isolation was not entirely accurate. Yet I have reserved 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. This was a revelation that must have brought a quiet solace to Elijah's weary heart. He was not alone. There were indeed 7,000 faithful souls, a remnant, hidden and perhaps unknown to each other, who had remained steadfast in their devotion to Yahweh. 7,000 was a significant number, representing a substantial portion of the population, a testament to the enduring power of faith even in the darkest of times. Their knees had not bowed, meaning they had not participated in the idolatrous rituals of Baal worship, which often involved prostrating oneself before an idol. Their mouths had not kissed him, a common gesture of reverence and homage in ancient Near Eastern religions, signifying their refusal to acknowledge Baal as their god. This hidden remnant was a promise of future hope, a seed from which true worship could once again flourish. Elijah listened, absorbing each word, each command, each revelation. The weight of his despair began to lift, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose, a clarity of mission that had been absent since his flight from Jezebel. The still, small voice had not offered him an escape from his duties, but a re-engagement with them, armed with new understanding and divine directives. He was no longer a hunted fugitive, but an agent of divine will, entrusted with shaping the destinies of kings and prophets. He rose slowly, the stiffness from his long journey and the cold night air still lingering in his joints. The first faint blush of dawn was beginning to paint the eastern sky, casting long, soft shadows across the rugged slopes of Mount Horeb. The stars were fading, and the world was slowly waking to a new day. The air was crisp and cool, carrying the scent of dry earth and ancient stone. He stepped out of the cave, his eyes scanning the vast, empty landscape, no longer with fear, but with a quiet determination. His first task was to find Elisha. He turned his back on the sacred mountain, the place of profound encounter, and began his long journey northward, back towards the populated lands of Israel. The path would be arduous, but his spirit was no longer broken. He walked with a renewed sense of direction, the divine instructions echoing in his mind, guiding his steps. The sun climbed higher, warming the desert air, and the journey began. He traveled for days, perhaps weeks, through the wilderness, across ancient trade routes and dusty paths, avoiding major towns where he might be recognized by Jezebel's agents. His route would have taken him through the arid Negev, then north through the central highlands of Judah and Samaria, until he reached the fertile plains of the Jordan Valley. He would have passed by small villages, their mud brick houses blending into the landscape, and seen shepherds tending their flocks on the hillsides, their calls echoing across the valleys. The sounds of daily life, the bleating of sheep, the distant shouts of farmers, the creak of wooden carts, would have gradually replaced the profound silence of Horeb. Finally, after what must have felt like an eternity of travel, he reached the region of Abel Meholah, a place known for its rich agricultural land, watered by the Jordan River. Here, the landscape was verdant, a stark contrast to the barren wilderness he had left behind. Fields of grain, olive groves, and vineyards stretched across the plains, testament to the fertility of the land. The air would have been filled with the scent of rich soil, growing crops, and the distant murmur of the river. As he approached, he saw a sight that was common in that agricultural region, a farmer plowing his field. But this was no ordinary farmer. There were 12 yoke of oxen, a significant number, indicating a man of considerable wealth and enterprise. Each yoke consisted of 2 oxen, meaning 24 powerful animals were tilling the earth, guided by 12 plowmen. Elisha himself was with the 12th yoke, personally engaged in the hard labor of preparing the soil for planting. This detail painted a picture of Elisha not as a cloistered scholar or a hermit, but as a man deeply connected to the land, to the rhythms of agricultural life, a practical man, strong and diligent. The scene was one of peaceful industry, the steady rhythm of the oxen pulling the wooden plows through the dark earth, turning over the soil, preparing it for new life. The sounds would have been the lowing of the oxen, the creak of the yokes, the soft swish of the plowshares cutting through the soil, and the occasional shouts of the plowmen guiding their animals. The sun would have been warm on their backs, the air thick with the smell of freshly turned earth. Elijah walked towards Elisha, his prophet's mantle, the same one he had drawn over his face on Horeb, wrapped around him. He did not speak, did not announce himself with dramatic pronouncements. Instead, in a simple, profound gesture, he approached Elisha and cast his mantle upon him. This act was deeply symbolic. The mantle, as a distinctive garment of a prophet, represented his authority, his spiritual power, and his calling. By casting it upon Elisha, Elijah was symbolically transferring that prophetic anointing, designating Elisha as his successor, a silent yet unmistakable summons to a new life, a new purpose. Elisha, deep in his work, must have felt the sudden weight of the rough fabric settle upon his shoulders. He would have stopped, perhaps turning slowly, his hand still gripping the plow handles, his brow furrowed in concentration. His eyes would have met Elijah's, and in that silent exchange, the meaning of the gesture would have become clear. It was a call, an invitation to leave behind the familiar life of farming and embrace the demanding, often solitary, path of a prophet. Without hesitation, Elisha left his oxen and ran after Elijah. His immediate response showed a deep spiritual readiness, a willingness to obey the divine call without question or delay. He had not sought this calling, but when it came, he recognized its significance. He caught up to Elijah and spoke, his voice perhaps a little breathless from running or from the sudden rush of emotion. "Please let me kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow you." This was a request born of filial piety, a desire to say farewell to his old life, to honor his parents before embarking on a journey from which there might be no return. It was a deeply human request, acknowledging the profound change that was about to take place in his life. Elijah's response was not a stern rebuke, but a quiet permission, almost an invitation to reflect on the gravity of the choice. "Go back again, for what have I done to you?" The words were perhaps a gentle challenge, a way of saying, "Consider what you are leaving, understand the weight of this call." It was as if Elijah was asking Elisha to truly grasp the implications of the mantle, to be fully conscious of the sacrifice involved. The mantle was not just a piece of cloth, it was a symbol of a life dedicated to God, a life of hardship, opposition, and profound spiritual responsibility. Elijah was not holding him captive, but offering him a choice, a chance to fully embrace the path. Elisha understood. He returned from following Elijah, a brief pause in his new journey, but a significant one. He went back to his oxen, the very animals that represented his former life, his livelihood, his connection to the land. But this time, his purpose was different. He took a yoke of oxen, perhaps the one he had been working with, and slaughtered them. This was a dramatic, irreversible act, a clear break with his past. He used the very implements of his farming life, the wooden yokes and the plows, as fuel for a fire to cook the meat. This act symbolized a complete severance from his old profession, a burning of bridges, leaving no possibility of return. He then distributed the meat to the people, to his farmhands, his family, his neighbors, and they ate together. This communal meal was a farewell feast, a public declaration of his new path. It was a way of sharing his transition, inviting his community to witness and acknowledge his departure. It was a moment of both celebration and solemnity, marking the end of one life and the beginning of another. The smell of roasting meat would have filled the air, mingling with the scent of the fertile earth, a sensory blend of his past and his future. After this decisive act, Elisha rose and followed Elijah, becoming his servant. He walked behind him, learning from him, observing his ways, absorbing the wisdom and experience of the older prophet. Their journey continued, a quiet companionship forged on dusty roads and under the vast, open skies. Elijah, no longer alone, now had a companion, a disciple, a future inheritor of the prophetic mantle. The still, small voice on Horeb had not only renewed Elijah's purpose but had also provided for the continuation of the divine work through a new generation. Their travels would have taken them through the familiar landscapes of Israel, often stopping in small towns and villages, or perhaps seeking refuge in the solitude of the wilderness. Elijah would have continued his prophetic ministry, confronting idolatry, speaking truth to power, and offering guidance to those who sought it. Elisha would have been a silent observer, a diligent student, watching how Elijah interacted with people, how he prayed, how he listened for the divine voice. He would have learned the rhythms of a prophet's life, the constant demands, the periods of solitude, the moments of profound spiritual insight. The seasons would have turned, the harsh summer heat giving way to the cooler, wetter days of autumn and winter, then the blossoming of spring. They would have seen the land transform, from parched earth to vibrant green, then to the golden hues of harvest. Each change of season would have been a quiet reminder of the cyclical nature of life, of renewal and growth, even amidst hardship. The sounds of their journey would have been the crunch of their sandals on stony paths, the distant calls of birds, the rustle of wind through dry grasses, the gentle murmur of conversations between them, perhaps about the scriptures, about the state of Israel, about the nature of God's will. Elisha's apprenticeship with Elijah was not a brief encounter but an extended period of mentorship, preparing him for the immense responsibilities that would eventually be his. He would have carried Elijah's water, prepared his meals, attended to his needs, but more importantly, he would have absorbed the spiritual essence of his master, learning not just the words of prophecy, but the very spirit of it. He was learning to listen for the still, small voice himself, to discern the subtle promptings of the divine in the midst of a tumultuous world. The people of Israel, still largely steeped in the worship of Baal, continued their ways, unaware of the quiet, profound work being done by these two prophets, preparing for a future where the covenant would be reasserted. The political landscape remained volatile, with King Ahab and Queen Jezebel still reigning in Samaria, their influence strong, their idolatry pervasive. Yet, the seeds of change had been sown on Mount Horeb, and now, through Elijah and Elisha, they were beginning to take root in the fertile soil of Israel. The quiet journey of these two men, often unnoticed by the powerful, was slowly, steadily, shaping the destiny of a nation, preparing the way for a dramatic shift, a return to the ancient ways, a re-establishment of the covenant with the Lord God of hosts. The sun would set each evening, casting long shadows across the land, and rise again each morning, bringing new light to their path, a constant reminder of the enduring presence that guided their every step, even when the path felt obscured by doubt or the weary weight of the world. Elijah, however, found himself far from such comforting rhythms, far from the familiar scent of wood smoke curling from village hearths or the distant bleating of sheep on a hillside. He was in the wilderness, a vast, unforgiving expanse that stretched out under an immense sky, a landscape carved by wind and time, where the very air seemed to hum with an ancient silence. He had fled from Jezebel's wrath, her furious vow echoing in his ears like a desert wind, threatening to extinguish the flame of his life just as he had extinguished the prophets of Baal. The memory of that day, the dramatic confrontation on Mount Carmel, the roaring fire from heaven, the sudden, terrible rain after years of drought, it all felt like a distant dream, a feverish vision that had left him utterly spent. Now, he was alone, utterly alone, save for the whisper of the wind and the relentless sun beating down upon the parched earth. He had walked for what felt like an eternity, his sandals stirring up fine dust with each weary step, the leather straps chafing against his skin. The journey had begun in Beersheba, at the very edge of Judah, a place that marked the boundary between settled land and the wild, untamed desert. From there, he had ventured deeper, drawn by an instinct he couldn't quite name, a desperate need for solitude, for escape, for an answer to the profound weariness that had settled deep within his bones. His spirit, once so bold and unyielding, now felt fragile, like a dried leaf ready to crumble at the slightest touch. He had left his young servant behind in Beersheba, perhaps to spare him the harshness of the journey, or perhaps because he felt this burden was one he had to carry alone, a solitary pilgrimage into the heart of his own despair. The sun, a relentless orb of fire in the pale sky, beat down upon the rocky terrain, baking the earth until it cracked and shimmered with heat. The air was dry, tasting of dust and the faint, acrid scent of sun-baked scrub. He walked until his legs ached, until his throat was raw and parched, until the very light of day seemed to press down upon him, heavy and suffocating. At last, utterly exhausted, he collapsed beneath a solitary broom tree, its sparse branches offering little in the way of shade, yet it was a small mercy in that vast, open space. The broom tree, or ritum in Hebrew, was a common sight in the wilderness, its tough, wiry branches and small leaves adapted to survive in such harsh conditions. Its roots could spread wide, seeking out moisture deep beneath the surface, and its wood, when dried, burned with a fierce, hot flame, making it a valuable resource for desert travelers. But for Elijah, it was simply a place to rest, a momentary reprieve from the sun's relentless gaze. He lay there, his body heavy with fatigue, his mind a whirlwind of fear and despondency. The enormity of his situation, the weight of his calling, the crushing loneliness, it all pressed in upon him. He had faced down hundreds of prophets, stood against a king and queen, and witnessed the miraculous power of his God. Yet now, a single threat from a vengeful woman had sent him fleeing into the desert, wishing for death. "It is enough," he whispered, his voice hoarse and barely audible, swallowed by the vast silence of the wilderness. "Now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers." The words were not a plea for mercy, but an expression of profound weariness, a surrender to the crushing weight of his perceived failure. He closed his eyes, the desert wind rustling faintly through the broom tree's leaves, a soft, dry whisper against the silence. Sleep, a heavy, dreamless sleep, claimed him then, a temporary escape from his anguish. As he slept, a gentle touch roused him. He stirred, his eyelids feeling heavy, crusted with the dust of the journey. He opened his eyes slowly, blinking against the soft, diffused light of dawn, or perhaps it was still night, the stars a brilliant tapestry above. A figure stood nearby, an angel, though Elijah did not immediately grasp its celestial nature. It simply radiated a quiet presence, a gentle warmth in the cool desert air. The angel spoke, its voice soft, like the rustling of silk, urging him to eat and drink. And there, beside him, was a small, round cake baked on hot stones, and a jar of water. The aroma of freshly baked bread, warm and earthy, mingled with the clean, cool scent of water, a stark contrast to the dry, dusty air he had been breathing. He ate the cake, its simple taste a profound comfort, and drank the water, feeling it cool and refresh his parched throat, bringing a flicker of life back to his weary body. The angel watched him with a silent, compassionate gaze, then urged him to eat again, for the journey ahead would be long and arduous. He ate and drank once more, feeling a strange, new strength begin to flow through his limbs, a warmth spreading from his stomach outwards. It was not the strength of a full meal, but something more, a miraculous sustenance that defied the meager portions. The angel then departed as quietly as it had arrived, leaving Elijah alone once more, but no longer utterly desolate. With this renewed strength, a strength that felt supernatural, he rose and continued his journey. He walked for 40 days and 40 nights, a journey that mirrored the ancient wanderings of his ancestors through this very wilderness, a journey of purification and revelation. 40 days and 40 nights, a period of profound significance in the ancient world, often associated with preparation, testing, and divine encounter. Moses had spent 40 days and 40 nights on Mount Sinai, receiving the law. The great flood had lasted 40 days and 40 nights. It was a time set apart, a sacred duration for transformation. His destination was Mount Horeb, also known as Mount Sinai, the very mountain where God had first revealed himself to Moses in the burning bush, where the covenant had been forged, where the 10 Commandments had been given amidst thunder and lightning. It was a place steeped in the history of his people, a sacred peak that rose majestically from the desert floor, its rugged slopes scarred by millennia of wind and rain. The journey was long, traversing vast, desolate plains, climbing rocky ascents, and descending into dry wadis, ancient riverbeds carved by flash floods that now lay silent and empty. The landscape shifted subtly, from sandy expanses to jagged, reddish-brown mountains, their peaks often shrouded in a hazy blue light in the distance. He walked through the heat of the day, the sun painting the sky in fiery hues at dusk, and under the cool, star-dusted canopy of the desert night. The silence was profound, broken only by the scuttling of unseen creatures, the distant cry of a nocturnal bird, or the soft whisper of the wind through rocky crevices. He carried no provisions, relying solely on the miraculous strength imparted by the angel, a strength that sustained him without hunger or thirst, a testament to the unseen hand guiding his every step. His thoughts were a quiet hum, a slow unraveling of his despair, replaced by a growing sense of anticipation, a quiet hope that at this sacred mountain he would find the answers he so desperately sought. Finally, after weeks of solitary travel, the distinctive silhouette of Mount Horeb rose before him, a formidable presence against the vast sky. Its slopes were rugged, strewn with boulders and sparse, hardy vegetation. He began the ascent, his steps now imbued with a purpose that transcended mere physical endurance. He climbed higher, the air growing cooler, thinner, the world below spreading out like a vast, ancient map. He found a cave, a natural hollow in the rock face, and entered, seeking shelter from the elements and a place to rest. The cave was cool and dark, smelling of damp earth and ancient stone, a quiet sanctuary after the long, exposed journey. As he settled into the cave, a voice, not a thunderous pronouncement but a quiet, clear inquiry, reached him. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" The question was direct, yet gentle, carrying no judgment, only an invitation to speak. It was the voice of the Lord, echoing not from the outside world, but from within the quiet chambers of his own heart, yet undeniably external, a presence that filled the small cave. Elijah, his voice still hoarse but now filled with a renewed sense of purpose, poured out his heart. "I have been very zealous for the Lord God of hosts," he began, the words tumbling out, a lifetime of dedication and struggle compressed into a few sentences. He spoke of the Israelites, his own people, who had forsaken the covenant, torn down the altars, and slain the prophets with the sword. He spoke of his own solitary stand. "I, even I only, am left," he declared, the weight of that loneliness heavy in his voice, "and they seek my life, to take it away." His words were a lament, a cry of despair, a plea for understanding in the face of what felt like utter abandonment. He had fought, he had striven, he had stood firm, and yet, it seemed, all for naught. He felt like the last bastion of faith, crumbling under the relentless assault of apostasy. The divine voice then instructed him, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord." So Elijah emerged from the cool darkness of the cave, stepping out onto the rugged mountainside. The air was crisp, the sky a deep, velvety blue, perhaps still before dawn, or perhaps the sun had just begun its ascent, casting a soft, ethereal glow over the peaks. He stood there, his cloak wrapped tightly around him, his gaze fixed on the vast expanse before him, waiting. And then the mountain began to tremble. A mighty wind, a powerful, roaring gale, swept across the peaks, tearing at the rocks, splitting them apart with an incredible force. It was not merely a strong breeze, it was a tempest, a violent convulsion of the air itself, howling and shrieking as it tore through the ancient landscape. The sound was deafening, a primal roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of the earth. Elijah braced himself against the onslaught, his hair and beard whipped about his face, his cloak flapping wildly. He had witnessed the power of God before, in fire and in rain, and this wind, this raw, untamed force, was another manifestation of that immense, uncontainable might. He knew, however, that the Lord was not in the wind, despite its awesome power. This was merely a prelude, a clearing of the way. Following the wind, the earth itself began to convulse. A violent earthquake shook the mountain, a deep, rumbling tremor that vibrated through the ground, through Elijah's very bones. Boulders shifted, rocks tumbled down the slopes with a terrifying clatter, and the very ground beneath his feet seemed to groan and heave. The sound was a low, guttural roar, a subterranean thunder that spoke of immense, uncontrollable power. The air filled with the scent of disturbed earth, of pulverized rock, a dry, mineral tang. He held fast, his senses overwhelmed by the raw power of the earth's movement, yet he knew, with an inner certainty, that the Lord was not in the earthquake. This, too, was a preparation, a further stripping away of expectation. Then, after the earthquake, a fire erupted. Not a gentle flame, but a fierce, consuming blaze, licking at the dry brush, roaring up the slopes, painting the night sky in hues of orange and red. The heat was intense, a scorching wave that washed over him, the crackling and spitting of the flames a new, terrifying symphony. The air grew thick with the smell of smoke, acrid and biting, stinging his eyes and catching in his throat. The light of the fire danced across the rugged peaks, casting long, shifting shadows, transforming the familiar landscape into a dramatic, almost apocalyptic scene. He had seen fire from heaven before, on Carmel, a controlled, divine flame, but this was wild, untamed, a force of destruction. Yet, even in this terrifying inferno, Elijah knew the Lord was not in the fire. After the fire had passed, leaving behind scorched earth and the lingering scent of ash, an eerie silence descended upon the mountain. It was not the profound silence of the desert, but a new kind of quiet, a stillness that felt pregnant with expectation, a hush that followed the storm. The air was cool again, cleansed by the wind and fire, carrying only the faint, metallic tang of distant rain, or perhaps the memory of the storm. And in that profound silence, a voice came. It was not a roar, not a tremor, not a consuming blaze, but a still, small voice. A thin whisper, the sound of sheer silence, a delicate, almost imperceptible sound that resonated not in his ears, but deep within his very being. It was a sound so subtle, so gentle, that it demanded absolute stillness, absolute attention to perceive it. It was the sound of a breath, a gentle sigh, a whisper that carried the weight of eternity. The Hebrew phrase, Kol Damrmah Dark Ah, literally translates to a sound of thin silence or a voice of delicate stillness, emphasizing its profound quietness, its almost imperceptible nature. It was not a voice that commanded attention through volume, but through its very absence of noise, its profound peace. When Elijah heard it, he instinctively pulled his mantle over his face, a gesture of reverence and awe, for he knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that the Lord was in this voice, this quiet, unassuming whisper. He stepped back into the mouth of the cave, shielding himself from the direct presence, overwhelmed by the intimacy of this encounter. The raw power of wind, earthquake, and fire had been immense, terrifying, but it was in this gentle, almost silent whisper that the true presence of God was revealed, not in overwhelming force, but in profound stillness. And again, the gentle voice spoke to him, the same question, yet imbued with a new depth of understanding. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" This time, the question was not just an inquiry, but an invitation to reflect, to truly articulate the depth of his heart in the presence of such quiet majesty. Elijah responded, his voice softer now, humbled by the encounter, yet still carrying the burden of his conviction. He repeated his lament, his words a quiet echo in the stillness of the mountain. "I have been very zealous for the Lord God of hosts, because the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they seek to take my life." His words were a confession of his despair, his sense of isolation, his profound belief that he was the last faithful one, standing against a tide of apostasy. He spoke of the broken covenant, the desecrated altars, the murdered prophets, a litany of transgressions that weighed heavily on his soul. The quiet of the mountain seemed to absorb his words, holding them gently, without judgment. Then, the still, small voice gave him instructions, a new path, a renewed purpose. He was to return, to go back by the way of the wilderness to Damascus. He was to anoint Hazael as king over Syria, a foreign king, a surprising command that spoke of God's sovereignty over all nations, even those outside Israel. And then, he was to anoint Jehu, the son of Nimshi, as king over Israel, a new dynasty, a radical shift in leadership. And finally, he was to anoint Elisha, the son of Shaphat from Abel-Meholah, as prophet in his place, a successor, a continuation of the prophetic mantle. The instructions were clear, precise, a roadmap for the future, a testament to God's ongoing plan, even when all seemed lost. The voice assured him that he was not alone, that he was not the last. Yet I have reserved 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. 7,000, a significant number, a remnant, a hidden faithful few who had remained steadfast in their devotion amidst the widespread idolatry. This revelation must have been a profound comfort to Elijah, shattering his illusion of solitary faithfulness, reminding him that God's work was always broader, deeper, and more enduring than he could perceive. He was not alone, there were others, hidden from his sight, but known to God, who had not succumbed to the pressures of the age. With these words, a new sense of peace settled over Elijah. The weight of his despair began to lift, replaced by a quiet resolve. He had come to the mountain seeking death, seeking an end to his suffering, but he had found renewal, a fresh commission, and the profound comfort of God's enduring presence, not in the spectacular displays of power, but in the gentle, intimate whisper of the still, small voice. He had learned that God was not only in the dramatic or inspiring events, but also, and perhaps more profoundly, in the quiet moments of communion, in the gentle guidance that followed the storm. He began his descent from Mount Horeb, the air still cool, the sun now fully risen, painting the desert landscape in soft, golden hues. The journey back would be long, but he was no longer fleeing in despair. He was returning with a renewed purpose, a fresh understanding of his calling, and the quiet assurance that he was not alone. The vast wilderness that had once seemed so threatening now felt like a path, a journey guided by an unseen hand. He walked with a lighter step, the dust of the desert no longer feeling quite so heavy beneath his feet. The scent of the desert, dry and earthy, now carried a hint of promise, a whisper of the future. He thought of Elisha, the young man he was to anoint, a new chapter unfolding, a continuation of the sacred work. The journey was long, but the quiet strength within him, born of the still, small voice, would sustain him through every step, every changing landscape, every rising and setting sun, a constant reminder of the enduring presence that guided his every breath, every quiet moment of contemplation beneath the vast, star-strewn canopy of the desert sky. The journey from Horeb, the mountain of God, back towards the familiar, yet now profoundly altered, landscapes of Israel, was not a swift one, for the desert, even when traversed with purpose, demands its own measured pace. Elijah, his spirit now settled into a deep, unwavering calm, walked with a different rhythm, the dust of the ancient paths rising gently around his worn sandals, each step a quiet communion with the earth beneath him. The sun, a familiar companion in its relentless journey across the heavens, warmed his back, and the air, though still dry and carrying the scent of parched earth and distant scrub, felt less oppressive, less threatening than it had during his flight. He carried with him not only the simple provisions for his journey, a water skin, a small pouch of dried figs and flatbread, but also the indelible imprint of the divine encounter, a knowing that permeated his very being, a gentle hum beneath the surface of his thoughts. His path would eventually lead him north, towards the fertile plains and rolling hills of the northern kingdom, but first, there were stops to be made, instructions to be fulfilled, the quiet work of preparing for the future. The first of these tasks, as revealed in the whisper on Horeb, was to anoint Hazael as king over Aram, a geopolitical act that would reshape the balance of power in the region, a subtle shifting of the sands of empire, orchestrated by a hand unseen yet profoundly felt. This was not a task for Elijah to complete directly, but rather a prophecy to be carried, a seed to be planted in the unfolding tapestry of time. Then there was Jehu, son of Nimshi, to be anointed king over Israel, a more direct and immediate intervention in the tumultuous affairs of his own people, a turning point for the kingdom that had strayed so far from its ancient covenant. And finally, the most personal, the most immediate of these divine directives, was to find Elisha, son of Shaphat, and anoint him as his successor, a passing of the mantle, a continuation of the prophetic lineage, ensuring that the voice of truth would not be silenced. Elijah understood the weight of these instructions, the intricate dance of human will and divine purpose. He did not rush, for the desert had taught him patience, and the mountain had taught him trust. He moved through the sparse, rocky terrain, past wadis that were dry riverbeds for most of the year, their banks lined with hardy acacia trees and tamarisk, their roots reaching deep into the earth for hidden moisture. He would pause at oases, where date palms offered shade and their sweet fruit, and where the precious water, cool and clear, refreshed his body and spirit. He observed the slow, deliberate movements of Bedouin encampments in the distance, their black tents dark against the ochre landscape, the faint bleating of their sheep and goats carried on the wind. He heard the rustle of lizards in the dry grass, the distant cry of a hawk circling high above, its shadow briefly sweeping across the sun-baked earth. His journey was a meditation, a walking prayer. He recalled the faces of the people he had served, the suffering he had witnessed, the injustices that had fueled his fiery pronouncements. He remembered the widow of Zarephath, her unwavering faith, the miraculous oil and flour that never ran out, the warmth of her small home, the scent of baking bread. He remembered the boy, brought back to life, the gasp of his mother, the profound mystery of life and death held in the balance of a divine breath. These memories were not burdens, but rather anchors, reminding him of the deep well of compassion that underlay even his most stern pronouncements. As he traveled northward, the landscape gradually began to change. The stark, barren beauty of the true wilderness began to soften, giving way to more cultivated lands, patches of green appearing with greater frequency. He passed by small villages, their mud brick homes clustered together, the scent of wood smoke and cooking fires mingling in the evening air. He saw farmers tilling their fields, their oxen moving slowly, steadily, across the rich earth. The sounds of human activity, once a distant memory, began to return, the chatter of voices, the laughter of children, the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer. He moved quietly, often unnoticed, a solitary figure with a weathered face and eyes that held the depth of the desert and the stillness of the mountain. His first immediate task was to find Elisha. The divine instruction had been clear, precise. Elisha, son of Shaphat, from Abel-Meholah. Abel-Meholah, a place name that spoke of meadow of the dance, suggesting a fertile region, likely in the Jordan Valley, known for its rich agricultural land. This was a place of cultivation, of steady, laborious work, far removed from the dramatic heights of Carmel or the desolate expanse of Horeb. It was a place where life unfolded with a different kind of rhythm, tied to the seasons, to the planting and the harvest. As Elijah drew closer to the Jordan Valley, the air grew heavier, more humid, carrying the scent of damp earth and growing things. The river itself, a ribbon of life winding through the valley, was a constant presence, its gentle murmur a counterpoint to the desert silence. He could hear the distant lowing of cattle, the rustle of leaves in the groves of olive and fig trees, the buzzing of insects in the warm afternoon sun. The path became less defined, giving way to tracks worn by livestock and farmers. He eventually arrived in the vicinity of Abel Meholah. The field stretched out before him, green and vibrant, a testament to the hard work of the people who tended them. The sun was still high in the sky, casting long shadows from the trees. He saw men working in the fields, their backs bent over the earth, their movements practiced and rhythmic. And then he saw him. There, in one of the expansive fields, was Elisha. He was not merely working, but was deeply engaged in the labor of the land, a man of substance, clearly from a prosperous family, for he was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen before him, and he himself was with the 12th. This was a significant operation, indicating a large estate, well managed, requiring considerable resources and diligent oversight. The site was one of industry and order, a stark contrast to the wild, untamed landscapes Elijah had so recently inhabited. The oxen moved slowly, deliberately, their heavy hooves sinking slightly into the rich, dark soil, turning it over in long, even furrows. The air was filled with the earthy scent of freshly turned earth, mingling with the faint smell of the animals and the sweat of the laborious. The creak of the wooden plows, the occasional lowing of an ox, the quiet commands of the plowmen, these were the sounds of life in this fertile valley. Elisha, guiding his own team, was focused, his movements strong and steady, his hands calloused from the reins, his brow perhaps furrowed in concentration. He was a man deeply rooted in the practicalities of the world, responsible for the sustenance of his household and his community. Elijah approached him, his steps silent on the soft earth. He did not call out, did not announce his presence with a shout or a dramatic gesture. He simply walked towards Elisha, a figure emerging from the shimmering heat of the afternoon, a man whose very presence carried the weight of the wilderness and the quiet authority of the divine. Elisha, engrossed in his work, might not have noticed him immediately, his gaze fixed on the furrow he was creating, ensuring its straightness, its depth. When Elijah reached him, he did not speak. He performed a simple, yet profoundly symbolic act. He took off his mantle, his rough, woven cloak, the very garment that had been his companion through storms and droughts, through moments of despair and revelation, the garment that symbolized his prophetic office, and he cast it over Elisha. It was a gesture of transfer, of anointing, of calling. The heavy fabric, perhaps still carrying the faint scent of smoke from a desert fire or the dry dust of the wilderness, settled upon Elisha's shoulders, a tangible weight, a silent invitation. Elisha, startled perhaps by the sudden touch, by the unexpected presence of this renowned prophet, stopped his plowing. He turned, and his eyes met Elijah's. There were no words exchanged, not yet. Only the silent understanding that passed between them, a recognition of destiny, a moment suspended in time amidst the rhythmic sounds of the field. The sun continued its descent, casting longer shadows across the newly turned earth. The oxen stood patiently, their breath steaming faintly in the warm air. Elisha understood. He knew who Elijah was, the prophet who had stood against Baal, who had called down fire from heaven, who had walked with God in the wilderness. And he understood the meaning of the mantle. It was a call to a different life, a life of service, of prophecy, of walking a path far removed from the fertile fields of Abel Meholah. It was a call to leave behind the familiar, the comfortable, the secure. Without hesitation, Elisha left his oxen. He did not look back at the 12 teams, at the vast fields he managed, at the life he had so diligently built. He ran after Elijah, his heart perhaps pounding with a mixture of awe and trepidation, but also with a deep sense of purpose, a recognition of the divine hand in this unexpected encounter. "Let me kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow you," Elisha requested, his voice perhaps a little breathless, a touch of urgency in his tone. It was a reasonable request, a desire for a final farewell, a moment of closure before embarking on a new and uncertain path. It showed his deep respect for his family, a natural human yearning for connection before a great departure. Elijah's response was not a command, but a question, almost a gentle challenge. "Go back again, for what have I done to you?" It was as if Elijah was saying, "I have merely presented you with a choice. The decision is yours." Reflect on what has just happened, on the significance of this moment. There is no compulsion, only an invitation. It was a test, perhaps, of Elisha's conviction, of the depth of his understanding of the call. It was also a recognition of the profound sacrifice Elisha was being asked to make. Elisha did not hesitate. He understood the unspoken meaning, the gravity of the choice. He went back, not to reconsider, but to prepare. He took a yoke of oxen, 2 of the very animals he had been plowing with, and he slaughtered them. This was not merely an act of providing a meal, it was a profound symbolic gesture. He used the plowing equipment, the wooden yoke, the very instruments of his former life, as fuel for the fire. He cooked the meat, sharing it with the people, with his family, with the laborers in the field. It was a feast of farewell, a public declaration of his decision, a severing of ties with his past life, a burning of the bridges behind him. He was leaving nothing to return to, no lingering attachment to the fields, to the comfort of his family estate. He was committing fully, irrevocably, to the path laid out before him. The scent of roasting meat mingled with the earthy smell of the fields, a final sensory memory of his old life. The laughter and chatter of the people as they shared the meal, the warmth of the fire, the fading light of the setting sun, these were the backdrop to his profound transformation. After this decisive act, Elisha arose and followed Elijah. He became his servant, his attendant, his disciple. This was not a position of equal standing, but one of learning, of apprenticeship. He would walk alongside Elijah, observing, listening, absorbing the wisdom and the spirit of the older prophet. He would learn the ways of the wilderness, the rhythms of prophecy, the subtle language of divine communication. He would carry Elijah's water, prepare his meals, attend to his needs, a humble beginning for a man destined for greatness. Their journey continued, now as 2 figures against the vastness of the land. They would travel through the hills and valleys of Israel, their path often leading them to the places where the people gathered, where the spiritual battles were being fought. Elijah, no longer alone, had found his successor, the one who would carry on the sacred work. Elisha, no longer a wealthy farmer, had found his purpose, his calling, a life dedicated to the divine. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into months, as they traversed the land. They would sleep under the open sky, the stars a familiar tapestry above them, or find shelter in small villages, in the homes of those who still honored the ancient covenant. Elijah would teach Elisha, not always with words, but through example, through the quiet strength of his presence, through his unwavering faith. Elisha would watch, listen, and learn, his heart open to the profound lessons that unfolded before him. He saw Elijah's compassion for the suffering, his fierce indignation against injustice, his deep reverence for the divine. He learned about the subtle signs of the changing weather, the wisdom of the desert, the resilience of the human spirit. He learned to discern the voice of God, not always in dramatic displays of power, but often in the gentle whisper, in the quiet conviction that settled in the heart. He learned that true strength lay not in outward might, but in an inner stillness, a deep connection to the source of all life. He saw Elijah pray, his face etched with devotion, his words rising like incense to the heavens. He witnessed the quiet miracles, the subtle interventions, the profound impact of a single word spoken with divine authority. The journey was a long apprenticeship, a slow unfolding of destiny. Elisha was being prepared, refined, shaped for the immense responsibilities that would one day be his. He was learning to carry the mantle, not just the physical garment, but the spiritual weight, the prophetic calling. He was learning to see the world through Elijah's eyes, to understand the spiritual landscape of his people, to discern the subtle currents of divine purpose in the midst of human turmoil. The sun would rise each morning, painting the eastern sky with hues of rose and gold, awakening the land to another day of labor and life. The air would fill with the sounds of birdsong, the distant bleating of sheep, the gentle rustle of leaves in the morning breeze. They would break their fast with simple provisions, perhaps a piece of dried fruit, a crust of bread, a sip of water from a cool spring. Then they would continue their journey, their steps steady and purposeful, their hearts attuned to the quiet promptings of the divine. As they walked, Elijah might share stories of the past, of the prophets who had come before him, of the covenant made on Sinai, of the long and winding history of their people. Elisha would listen intently, absorbing every word, every nuance, building a foundation of understanding that would serve him in the years to come. He learned about the cycles of faith and apostasy, the constant tension between obedience and rebellion, the enduring patience of the divine. The landscapes they traversed were varied and beautiful, rolling hills covered in olive groves, fertile valleys where wheat and barley grew tall, rocky outcrops where wild thyme and fragrant herbs clung to the earth. They would pass by ancient ruins, silent witnesses to forgotten civilizations, and by bustling towns, their markets filled with the vibrant colors and sounds of daily life. Elijah moved through these places with a quiet dignity, his presence often drawing curious glances, sometimes recognition, but he rarely lingered. His purpose was clear, his path guided by a higher hand. Elisha, walking beside him, was learning to shed the layers of his former life, to embrace the austerity and the profound spiritual richness of his new calling. He was learning to listen, not just with his ears, but with his heart, to the subtle messages that permeated the world around him. He was learning to trust, not in his own strength or resources, but in the unwavering presence that had called him from the plough. The quiet strength born of the still, small voice on Horeb was now a shared inheritance, a guiding light for both the seasoned prophet and his eager disciple, sustaining them through every step, every changing landscape, every rising and setting sun, a constant reminder of the enduring presence that guided their every breath, every thought, every quiet moment of reflection under the vast, star-dusted canopy of the ancient sky. Elijah, having found that profound stillness, that gentle whisper that resonated deeper than any tempest, had descended from the mountain's craggy heights, his spirit renewed, his purpose clarified, though the path ahead remained shrouded in the mists of the future. He had been instructed to return by the way of the wilderness to Damascus, a long and arduous journey that would take him far from the familiar landscapes of Judah and Israel, back into the stark, sun-baked expanse where he had first found refuge and sustenance by the brook Cherith. This was not a direct route, but one that skirted the eastern edges of the settled lands, through territories less trodden, where the wind carried the scent of wild herbs and the silence was broken only by the cry of a distant raptor or the rustle of unseen creatures in the scrub. The journey itself was a pilgrimage, each step a meditation, each sunrise a fresh canvas of gold and rose unfurling across the horizon, each sunset a slow surrender to the deep indigo of the desert night. He would have walked with a steady, unhurried pace, his sturdy sandals kicking up fine dust that settled like a soft veil on the low-lying bushes. The air, even in the cooler hours of dawn and dusk, often held the dry, earthy scent of sun-baked rock and the faint, sweet perfume of hardy desert blossoms that clung tenaciously to life. He would have carried little, perhaps a water skin made from cured goat hide, its contents sloshing softly with each stride, a small pouch of dried figs or dates, and his simple prophet's mantle, woven from rough camel hair, which served as both cloak against the chill of the night and a humble covering from the relentless midday sun. The landscape would have shifted subtly over the weeks, from the jagged, dark volcanic rock of the Horeb region to the more expansive, gravelly plains and occasional wadis that carved their way through the desert floor, dry for much of the year but bearing the telltale signs of ancient, powerful floods. He would have passed by isolated Bedouin encampments, their black goat hair tents dark against the ochre earth, the faint bleating of their flocks carried on the wind, and the distant, rhythmic thud of a pestle grinding grain. These were fleeting encounters, often observed from a distance, as Elijah maintained his solitary journey, his focus inward, his spirit attuned to the quiet guidance he had received. His destination, Damascus, was a city of ancient renown, a verdant oasis nestled within the Syrian desert, fed by the Barada River. It was a place of bustling markets, towering walls, and a rich history, a stark contrast to the desolate beauty of the wilderness he traversed. The instruction to go there was not merely a geographical directive but a strategic one, for it was in Damascus that he was to anoint Hazael as king over Aram, a foreign nation, and Jehu as king over Israel, a man from within his own people, though not of the established royal line. These were acts of profound geopolitical significance, shaping the future of the region, yet they were presented to Elijah in that quiet whisper, as part of the divine tapestry being woven. And then there was the instruction to anoint Elisha, the son of Shaphat of Abel-Meholah, to be prophet in his place. This command, perhaps more than any other, would have resonated deeply within Elijah. The burden of prophecy, the solitary path, The relentless struggle against idolatry and injustice had been heavy. To know that a successor was to be raised up, a younger man to carry the torch, must have brought a quiet sense of relief, a peaceful acceptance of the natural order of things, of the flow of generations. As Elijah journeyed northward, the terrain gradually softened, the desert giving way to more fertile lands as he approached the northern reaches of Israel. The air would have grown less dry, carrying the scent of cultivated fields, of olive groves and vineyards. The sounds of human habitation would have become more frequent, the distant lowing of cattle, the chatter of voices, the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer from a distant village. He would have passed through familiar territories, perhaps skirting the edges of the Jezreel Valley, a fertile plain known for its rich soil and strategic importance, a place where battles had been fought and empires had risen and fallen. It was in this region, perhaps near the Jordan River Valley, a place of lush vegetation and abundant water, that Elijah found Elisha. The text simply states that Elisha was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen before him, and he himself was with the 12th. This detail paints a vivid picture of a man of substance, a prosperous farmer. Plowing with 12 yoke of oxen meant that Elisha was not merely a small landholder. He likely owned a significant estate, requiring multiple teams and laborious. To be with the 12th suggests that Elisha was actively involved in the work, perhaps overseeing the operation, or even taking his turn at the plow, a man connected to the earth, diligent and hard-working. Imagine the scene, the morning sun, perhaps still low in the eastern sky, casting long shadows across the freshly turned earth. The rich, dark soil, moist from the morning dew, would have given off a sweet, earthy aroma as the plowshares cut through it. The air would have been filled with the rhythmic creak of wooden plows, the occasional lowing of the oxen, their powerful muscles straining against the harnesses, and the quiet commands of the plowmen. The sun would have warmed Elijah's face as he approached, his figure perhaps silhouetted against the rising light, a solitary, distinctive presence in his rough mantle. Elijah did not speak. He did not deliver a lengthy sermon or a dramatic pronouncement. Instead, he simply walked past Elisha and cast his mantle upon him. This act, so simple yet so profound, was a universally understood gesture of investiture, a symbolic transfer of authority and calling. The mantle, that rough garment of camel hair, was more than just clothing. It was the very emblem of Elijah's prophetic office, a tangible representation of his connection to the divine. When it settled upon Elisha's shoulders, perhaps briefly, before Elijah continued on his way, it carried the weight of a sacred trust. Elisha's reaction was immediate and decisive. He left the oxen and ran after Elijah, his heart pounding with a mixture of awe and understanding. He knew, instinctively, what this gesture meant. "Let me, I pray thee, kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow thee," he pleaded. This was not a request to delay, but a heartfelt desire to bid farewell to his former life, to honor his parents one last time before embarking on a journey of profound transformation. The term father and mother here is not just literal, it represents his entire family, his home, his past. Elijah's response was equally understated, yet full of meaning. "Go back again, for what have I done to thee?" This was not a dismissal, but an invitation for Elisha to consider the weight of the calling, to make a conscious, uncoerced choice. It was as if Elijah was saying, "The choice is yours." I have merely presented the path. Reflect on what this means. The question, "What have I done to thee?" carried a gentle irony, acknowledging the immense, life-altering nature of the mantle's touch. Elisha understood. He returned to his oxen, but not to continue plowing. Instead, he took a yoke of oxen, likely the very ones he had been guiding, and slaughtered them. He then used the plowing equipment, the wooden yokes and perhaps even the plow itself, as fuel to cook the meat. This was a powerful, symbolic act of severing ties with his old life. He was not merely leaving his farm, he was irrevocably burning the bridges behind him, demonstrating a complete and unreserved commitment to his new path. The scent of roasting meat would have mingled with the earthy smell of the fields, a final, poignant feast. He shared the cooked meat with the people, perhaps his farmhands, his family, his neighbors, a communal meal that marked the end of one era and the beginning of another. This act of sharing also signified his generosity and his desire to leave his former community well, acknowledging their past connection before moving on. After this decisive act, Elisha rose up and went after Elijah, and ministered unto him. The word ministered here implies a role of service, of apprenticeship. Elisha became Elijah's attendant, his disciple, learning from the seasoned prophet not through formal instruction in a school, but through observation, through shared journeys, through quiet moments of presence. He would have walked alongside Elijah, perhaps carrying his few possessions, preparing simple meals over a small fire, listening to the wisdom that fell from Elijah's lips, and absorbing the silent lessons of a life lived in communion with the divine. Their travels together would have taken them across the varied landscapes of Israel, from the fertile plains to the rugged hill country, from the bustling towns to the quiet solitude of the wilderness. Elisha would have witnessed Elijah's encounters with kings and commoners, his pronouncements of judgment and his acts of compassion. He would have seen the prophet's unwavering faith, his courage in the face of opposition, and his deep, abiding connection to the still, small voice that had called him. The relationship between Elijah and Elisha was not merely that of master and servant, but of mentor and protege, of spiritual father and son. Elisha's devotion was profound, and he would not leave Elijah's side, even as the time for Elijah's departure approached. The narrative describes their final journey together, a poignant procession that began in Gilgal, a place steeped in the history of Israel, where the Israelites had first encamped after crossing the Jordan into the Promised Land. From there, they traveled to Bethel, another ancient site, known for Jacob's dream of a ladder reaching to heaven, a place where the veil between heaven and earth seemed thin. At Bethel, a company of prophets, likely a group of young men studying under a senior prophet, came out to Elisha and asked, "Knowest thou that the Lord will take away thy master from thy head today?" This question, posed by those who also possessed a measure of prophetic insight, confirmed the impending separation. Elisha, his voice perhaps thick with emotion, replied, "Yea, I know it. Hold ye your peace." He did not want to speak of it, to give voice to the sorrow that was already settling in his heart. From Bethel, they continued their journey to Jericho, a city famously brought down by the trumpets of Joshua, a place of historical significance and a vibrant community even in their time. Again, the sons of the prophets approached Elisha with the same somber question, and again, Elisha acknowledged his awareness, his quiet grief, urging them to silence. The weight of the impending event grew heavier with each step, with each passing mile. Finally, they reached the Jordan River. Elijah, knowing his time was near, asked Elisha, "Tarry, I pray thee, here, for the Lord hath sent me to Jordan." But Elisha, resolute in his devotion, responded with an oath, "As the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee." This was not merely stubbornness, but an expression of profound loyalty and a deep desire to witness the culmination of Elijah's earthly ministry, to be present for that sacred transition. So, the two prophets stood by the banks of the Jordan, the water flowing steadily, reflecting the pale light of the sky. 50 men of the sons of the prophets, having followed them from a distance, stood watching from afar, their faces etched with anticipation and perhaps a touch of awe. Elijah took his mantle, the very same garment he had cast upon Elisha years earlier, and wrapped it together. He then struck the waters with it. And the waters parted, just as they had for Joshua and the Israelites centuries before, just as they had for Moses at the Red Sea. A dry path appeared, and Elijah and Elisha walked across on dry ground, the rushing river stilled and held back by the power that flowed through Elijah's simple cloak. As they walked, Elijah spoke to Elisha, "Ask what I shall do for thee, before I be taken away from thee." This was a final, profound offer, a moment for Elisha to articulate his deepest desire, his greatest need, as he prepared to step into the mantle of prophecy himself. Elisha's request was bold, yet deeply humble. "I pray thee, let a double portion of thy spirit be upon me." In ancient Israel, a double portion was the inheritance of the firstborn son, signifying a greater share of the father's estate and a continuation of his legacy. Elisha was not asking for twice the power of Elijah, but for the full inheritance of a spiritual son, to be fully equipped to carry on the work, to be recognized as Elijah's true successor, empowered by the same divine spirit that had animated Elijah's extraordinary life. Elijah acknowledged the magnitude of the request. "Thou hast asked a hard thing, nevertheless, if thou see me when I am taken from thee, it shall be so unto thee, but if not, it shall not be so." This was a test of Elisha's vigilance, his spiritual attentiveness. To witness the departure would be a sign of his readiness, his profound connection to his master, and his worthiness to receive the double portion. And then, as they walked on, continuing their quiet conversation, perhaps speaking of the past, of the challenges ahead, of the enduring faithfulness of the divine, it happened. A chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared, blazing with an ethereal light that would have momentarily eclipsed the sun. The air would have shimmered with heat, and a sound like rushing wind, or perhaps the crackling of an immense fire, would have filled the space. The fiery chariot and horses separated them, a sudden, dramatic intervention from the heavens. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. Elisha saw it all. He watched as his master, his spiritual father, was taken, not by death, but by a miraculous ascent, a fiery translation. The sight would have been overwhelming, a moment of profound awe and sorrow. He cried out, his voice breaking, my father, the chariot of Israel, and the horsemen thereof." This lament was not just for Elijah the man, but for Elijah the protector, the spiritual warrior, whose presence was more powerful than any army, whose prayers and prophetic declarations had been Israel's true defense. And he saw him no more. The fiery vision vanished, the whirlwind subsided, and Elisha was left standing alone by the Jordan, the river flowing once more with its gentle, unceasing murmur. In his grief and his profound sense of loss, Elisha took hold of his own clothes and tore them in two pieces, a traditional expression of deep mourning. Then he picked up the mantle of Elijah that had fallen from him. This was the same rough garment, now imbued with an even deeper significance, a tangible link to the power and presence of his departed master. He returned to the bank of the Jordan, the very spot where they had crossed. He stood there, perhaps for a long moment, the weight of the mantle in his hands, the echoes of Elijah's voice still in his ears, the image of the fiery chariot seared into his memory. He took the mantle of Elijah that had fallen from him and struck the waters and said, "Where is the Lord God of Elijah?" The question was not one of doubt, but of invocation, a plea for the continuation of that divine power, a test of his own inheritance. And the waters parted. Again, the river yielded, creating a dry path, a clear demonstration that the double portion had indeed been granted, that the spirit of Elijah now rested upon Elisha. The sons of the prophets, who had watched from afar, saw this miraculous parting of the waters. They understood. They recognized the sign. "The spirit of Elijah doth rest on Elisha," they declared, and they came to meet him, bowing themselves to the ground before him, acknowledging his new authority, his new calling. The transition was complete. The mantle had passed. The still, small voice that had guided Elijah now resonated within Elisha, preparing him for his own long and impactful ministry, a ministry that would be marked by miracles of provision, healing, and even resurrection, a testament to the enduring power that flows through those who listen deeply, who obey faithfully, and who carry the light of truth through the changing seasons of the world, a light that continues to shine, quietly, steadily, through every generation, every challenge, every whispered prayer, every moment of profound stillness, guiding, comforting, and ever present, like the gentle, rhythmic lapping of water against a quiet shore, or the soft, consistent breath of the wind through ancient trees, carrying the scent of distant rain, a promise of renewal, a quiet, unwavering presence that settles deep within the heart, calming every anxious thought, every restless impulse, inviting a profound and peaceful surrender to the deep, soft embrace of the quiet night, a gentle descent into the calm, inviting depths of peaceful, restorative rest, a profound and quiet drifting. A profound and quiet drifting. Elijah, his face still hidden within the rough folds of his mantle, felt the lingering resonance of that profound stillness, a quiet echo in the very core of his being, a gentle warmth spreading through his weary bones, a sensation far more comforting than any fire, more sheltering than any cave. The air itself seemed to hum with a low, almost imperceptible vibration, a sacred hush that settled over the ancient mountain, quieting the rustle of the few hardy shrubs, stilling the distant call of a night bird, holding the very breath of the world in a tender embrace. He had known the thunder, the earthquake, the fierce, devouring flame, each a terrifying display of power that had shaken the very foundations of the earth and sky, but none had touched him with such intimate, penetrating force as this soft, almost inaudible whisper, this gentle breath that seemed to speak directly to the deepest, most hidden chambers of his soul. Slowly, with a reverence that bordered on fear yet was laced with an undeniable peace, he began to lower his hands, the rough wool of his cloak sliding against his calloused skin, a faint, dry scent of dust and desert herbs rising from the fabric. He did not immediately look up, but kept his gaze fixed on the uneven floor of the cave, the ancient stone worn smooth by countless ages, by the slow, persistent drip of water, by the passage of unseen creatures, by the very breath of the mountain itself. The light, if it could be called light, within the cave was not from any visible source, but seemed to emanate from the air itself, a soft, diffuse glow that softened the sharp edges of the rock, painting the shadows in shades of deep indigo and charcoal, making the space feel both vast and intimately enclosed. Then the voice came again, not a whisper this time, but a gentle, resonant inquiry, a question that flowed like cool water over parched ground, carrying no judgment, only a deep, abiding understanding. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" it asked, the words seeming to form not in the air, but within the silent spaces of his own mind, a thought planted gently, inviting a response. It was the same question that had been posed to him before, when he had first arrived, shivering and alone, seeking refuge from the storm, from the relentless pursuit of his enemies, from the crushing weight of his own despair. But this time, the question felt different, imbued with a quiet patience, an invitation to truly speak, to unburden his heart in a way he had not dared to before, even to himself. He lifted his head then, his eyes, still heavy with the memory of tears and the long vigil, scanning the shadowy expanse of the cave, searching for a form, a figure, anything that might give shape to the profound presence he felt. But there was nothing, only the ancient stone, the cool, damp air, the profound and enveloping stillness. He was alone, yet not alone, surrounded by an invisible, comforting presence that filled every crevice of the cave, every space between the atoms of the rock, every beat of his own tired heart. And so, he spoke. His voice, when it finally emerged, was a low, rough murmur, thick with emotion, yet steadied by the quiet strength that now seemed to flow through him. "I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty," he began, the familiar words tumbling out, a rehearsed lament that had played in his mind countless times during his long journey, during his solitary nights in the wilderness. "The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too." His voice held a tremor, a lingering echo of the fear and loneliness that had driven him to this desolate place, to this ancient mountain, to this very cave. He spoke of his unwavering devotion, his tireless efforts, his solitary stand against a tide of apostasy, a world that seemed to have turned its back on the very source of its being. He painted a picture of utter desolation, of a faith extinguished, of a people lost, and of himself, a solitary beacon, flickering precariously in the encroaching darkness. The silence that followed was not empty, but full, rich with an unspoken understanding, a profound empathy that seemed to absorb his words, to hold them gently in its vast embrace. There was no immediate answer, no sudden pronouncement, only the quiet continuation of that deep, pervasive stillness, allowing his words to settle, allowing the raw edges of his emotion to soften, to be soothed by the quiet presence. He felt a loosening in his chest, a subtle release of the tension that had gripped him for so long, a slow, almost imperceptible unwinding of the tight knots of fear and frustration that had bound his spirit. Then the voice returned, not with a rebuke nor with a grand declaration, but with a gentle, yet firm, instruction, a quiet command that pointed him back toward the world he had fled. "Go back the way you came," it said, the words echoing softly in the quiet chambers of his mind, "and go to the desert of Damascus. When you get there, anoint Hazael king over Aram. Also, anoint Jehu son of Nimshi king over Israel. And anoint Elisha son of Shaphat from Abel Meholah to succeed you as prophet. Elijah listened, his mind slowly processing the instructions, each name a thread in a tapestry of future events, a quiet unfolding of a divine plan that stretched far beyond his own immediate despair. Hazael, a name associated with the powerful Aramean kingdom to the north, a kingdom that often clashed with Israel, a force that would bring about a reckoning. Jehu, a military commander, a man of decisive action, destined to bring a swift and violent end to the dynasty of Ahab and Jezebel, the very rulers who had sought his life. And Elisha, a successor, a new voice, a continuation of the prophetic line, a promise that the work would not end with him, that the light would not be extinguished. The weight of his solitude, which had pressed down on him with such crushing force, began to lift, replaced by a quiet sense of purpose, a renewed understanding that he was not alone, that his mission was not yet complete, that his life, though threatened, was still held within the vast, unfolding narrative of something far greater than himself. The quiet voice had not offered him an escape from his troubles, nor had it promised an immediate end to his suffering, but it had given him something far more profound, a path forward, a renewed sense of direction, a quiet assurance that even in the deepest despair, there was still work to be done, a purpose to be fulfilled. He remained in the cave for a time, letting the words sink in, letting the profound stillness wash over him, cleansing his spirit, restoring his strength, preparing him for the journey ahead. The cool, damp air of the cave, which had once felt like a tomb, now felt like a sanctuary, a place of quiet transformation. He could hear the faint, rhythmic drip of water somewhere deeper within the rock, a sound that had been there all along, but which he now heard with a new clarity, a quiet, persistent melody in the vast symphony of the mountain's silence. The scent of damp earth and ancient stone filled his nostrils, grounding him, connecting him to the deep, enduring heart of the earth. As the first faint blush of dawn began to paint the eastern sky, seeping through the mouth of the cave in shades of soft rose and lavender, Elijah slowly rose, his movements deliberate, unhurried. The long night, filled with the terrifying grandeur of the storm and the profound intimacy of the still, small voice, had passed, leaving behind a quiet sense of peace, a deep, abiding calm. He adjusted the rough mantle on his shoulders, the familiar weight of the fabric a comforting presence against his skin. The air outside the cave was crisp and cool, carrying the faint, sweet scent of desert blossoms, a fragrance that spoke of new beginnings, of life persistent even in the harshest of lands. He stepped out of the cave, blinking softly in the nascent light, his eyes adjusting to the vast expanse of the mountain landscape. The jagged peaks of Horeb, etched against the brightening sky, seemed to stand as silent witnesses to the profound encounter he had just experienced. The wind, which had raged with such fury the night before, was now a gentle whisper, rustling through the sparse vegetation, carrying with it the faint, distant call of a desert bird, a solitary cry that echoed in the vast, open spaces. Elijah began his descent, his footsteps slow and measured, each step a quiet affirmation of his renewed purpose. He did not rush, but moved with a quiet dignity, his gaze fixed on the path ahead, yet his heart still attuned to the lingering resonance of the divine presence he had encountered. The sun, still low on the horizon, cast long, stretching shadows across the rugged terrain, painting the landscape in hues of gold and ochre, transforming the stark beauty of the wilderness into a canvas of quiet majesty. He walked through the winding wadis, the dry riverbeds that snaked through the mountains, their smooth, water-worn stones bearing the silent testament to ancient floods, to the relentless power of nature. The air grew warmer as the sun climbed higher, but the coolness of the night still clung to the shaded crevices, offering a brief respite from the growing heat. He passed by ancient acacia trees, their thorny branches reaching toward the sky, their leaves a vibrant green against the muted tones of the desert, offering a splash of life in the desolate landscape. The journey from Horeb was long, a slow, deliberate return to the world he had sought to escape. But this time, he carried with him not the crushing weight of despair, but a quiet resolve, a deep and abiding peace that settled in his heart like a still, clear pool. He thought of Elisha, the young man he was to find, the one who would continue the work, the one who would carry the torch of prophecy into the future. The thought brought a gentle smile to his lips, a rare expression on his often somber face. It was a smile of hope, of quiet anticipation, of a future unfolding, guided by a hand far greater than his own. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, Elijah journeyed northward, retracing his steps, but with a different spirit, a renewed sense of purpose. The sun beat down on his shoulders, the dust rose in soft clouds beneath his feet, the nights were cool and vast, filled with the silent, watchful gaze of countless stars. He traveled through familiar landscapes, but saw them with new eyes, eyes that had witnessed the profound and gentle power of the still, small voice, eyes that now saw the world not as a place of abandonment, but as a stage for the unfolding of a divine plan. He finally reached Abel Meholah, a fertile plain near the Jordan River, a stark contrast to the barren wilderness of Horeb. Here, the land was rich and green, watered by the river, dotted with villages and fields. The air was filled with the sounds of life, the lowing of cattle, the distant shouts of farmers, the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. It was here, amidst the rhythms of everyday life, that he found Elisha ploughing a field with 12 yoke of oxen, a man deeply rooted in the earth, yet destined for a different path. Elijah walked toward him, his presence a quiet, commanding force in the bustling field. He did not speak, but simply cast his mantle over Elisha, a symbolic act, a silent invitation, a transfer of authority, a quiet passing of the torch. Elisha, understanding the profound significance of the gesture, immediately left his oxen, his livelihood, his past, and ran after Elijah, ready to follow, ready to embrace the unknown path that lay before him. And there we leave it, a story told, a night well spent. Thank you for trusting Easy Drift Sleep with your rest. If these stories bring you comfort, subscribing means we can keep making them for you. Good night. Sleep well.